Chapter 3205. This was an auction where origin crystals were used as the currency, but the item being auctioned was extremely important. It was a celestial god slot. There were no longer any celestial gods in the divine realm, but these outsiders were actually auctioning one. If news of this were to spread, it would definitely cause a huge commotion. Unfortunately, this news would never spread. Only a limited number of people would know about it. In fact, even this limited number of people would disappear after a while. Origin crystals, on the other hand, were extremely useful to the other races. Every single one of them could create a level 9 God King Brood Mother. A single slot was auctioned off for 3,000 origin crystals. This meant that Victor's faction had paid the price of 3,000 level 9 God King Brood Mother nests. These 3,000 level 9 God King Brood Mother nests meant that there would be countless outsiders. The rank 9 outsider representing Victor heaved a sigh of relief. The slot was finally in his hands. Next, the others competed for the second slot. The rank 9 outsider representing Bellico's faction said, "Since that's the case, I will also bid 3,000 on behalf of Lord Bellico." As he spoke, he took out a few more origin crystals and brought the total to 3,000. 3,000 seemed to be the limit, and no one objected. Next, all the factions seemed to have reached a tacit understanding and took out 3,000 origin crystals one after another. A total of 27,000 origin crystals were placed on the table. The origin crystals that the other factions had taken out were all taken away. The names of the 9 heavenly gods had been determined. The old man who had made the first bid did not get a spot for the divine realm, but he was still the one in charge here. He looked at the crowd and said, "The 9 forces have obtained the spots. After all is agreed upon, the 9 sovereigns who occupied the divine nests will voluntarily give up their divine nests. Next, the 15 of us will distribute the origin crystals among ourselves." The 9 factions had used 27,000 origin crystals to obtain 9 slots. The crystals they had paid would be given to the others. This could be considered a form of compensation. "All right, those who have taken the resources can make arrangements among yourselves." The old man stood up and announced the end of the meeting. God King Sander was in his temporary camp. There was a map in front of him with several cities marked on it. These were their next targets, and if they were correct, they would be able to conquer them in one go. "Sander, good news!" An excited voice came from outside the door. Sanderson turned around. "Cece, what are you so happy about?" Sandra turned around and saw Cece walk in. Cece was one of the leaders of the 3 forces and had a good relationship with Sandro. "The pagans behind me have agreed to launch a large-scale attack. Moreover, they're sending all of their forces. Tonight, we should have a good gathering. They've prepared the food and drinks. They said that they'll hold a celebration in advance." Cece smiled and said, "Just us." God King Sandini was quite surprised, because the outsiders on his side hadn't returned yet. But he nodded. This battle still depended on the outsiders. Since they were willing to come out in full force, it couldn't be any better. At night, Sacred King Sander arrived on time. He saw the alien who had been supporting him. He smiled and said, "I just came back, so I didn't want to disturb you." He didn't know if it was just his imagination, but God King Sandini felt that the other party's attitude towards him was a little more respectful. At this time, the food and drinks were already on the table. After 3 rounds of wine, Cece said drunkenly, "After this battle, we'll definitely win a great victory." The other God King nodded. He seemed to be in a good mood. "Actually, the battle is already over," said one of the 3 pagans. "Over?" Cece was stunned. Sander and the other God King were also stunned. "That's right." The alien who had been following Sander all this time turned to God King Sandro and said respectfully, "The battle is over. Stuart greets the heavenly god." The other 2 pagans immediately stood up and bowed respectfully to God King Sandro. Sandro's drunkenness instantly dissipated. He said in surprise, "What do you mean by this? How did I become a heavenly god?" Stuart said respectfully, "You're not now, but you will be soon." "But," Sandro turned around and looked at his other two god kings. He was shocked to find that they were no longer breathing. They were actually dead. The wine was poisoned. A similar scene played out in several other regions. In the 10 regions of the god realm, 9 people qualified to become heavenly gods had appeared, and God King Sandro was one of them. The teleportation array in Tree City flashed, and Xiao Lina walked out, covered in dust, and went straight to Zichen's residence. She quickly met with Zichen and reported the news she'd heard recently. The battle is over? Zichen was stunned when he heard this and was extremely stunned. Yes. There's been a rumor going around that God King Sandro will become a heavenly god in our region, Jolina said. I don't know if this is true or false, but one thing is for sure, the battle that has been going on for many years in the god realm has come to an end. How could this be? Zichen stood up and frowned. Was this the dark cloud in his heart? How did the battle end? Zichen asked. I'm not sure. It's said that the 2 god kings who could rival Sandro suddenly declared their allegiance to him. This region was unified and the battle stopped, Jolina said. What about those 2? It's said that they left right after the announcement. Left? That's what the news says. I'll go take a look. If a new heavenly god appears, Jolina, you should consider what to do with Yongding City. As soon as Zichen finished speaking, his figure disappeared. Jolina understood Zichen's meaning. Yongding City was her blood, sweat, and tears. It was time for her to make a choice. God King Sandro led his army back to his residence. He felt like he was floating in the air these past few days. Everything had happened too quickly, so quickly that it felt like a dream. He'd become a heavenly god just like that. Although he wasn't a heavenly god yet, he would be soon. Sandro. A voice suddenly rang out. Hearing this voice, Sandro frowned and shouted, How dare you! This was a conditioned reflex. During this period of time, everyone was incomparably respectful to him. In addition, this voice sounded very familiar. Among the people he was familiar with, there was no one he didn't dare to punish. But after seeing this person, Sandro came back to his senses. He hurriedly smiled and said, Lord Zichen, why are you here? Zichen looked at Sandro with a smile that wasn't a smile and said, Of course I'm here to congratulate you, Lord Heavenly God. Sandro's heart trembled. He said, Lord Zichen, what are you saying? I'm just a little god king. How could I become a heavenly god? All right, tell me the truth. What's going on? Chapter 3206. Seeing Zichen's cold expression, Sandro's expression changed. He cursed inwardly at this damned bastard for changing faces faster than one could flip a page. However, his smile didn't falter. Your Excellency, you're making things difficult for me. I don't know what happened either. You don't know why the battle stopped? Zichen's expression became incomparably cold. Do you really think you've become an Empyrean god? Sandro immediately smiled bitterly. Your Excellency, I really don't know. That night, I was still studying the strategic map, thinking of how to take down Ethan's faction in one fell swoop. Who would have thought that the next day, Cece would announce his allegiance to me, and then the 2 of them would disappear? Really? Zichen frowned as he looked at the other party. Sandro stretched out his hand. Of course. Every word is true. If Your Excellency doesn't believe me, you can search my soul memories. I promise I won't resist. Then what's the matter with becoming an Empyrean god? Rumor has it that you're going to become an Empyrean god, Zichen said coldly. Sandro smiled awkwardly. I've become a powerhouse in this region. I can be considered to have unified this place. Of course, Your Excellency isn't included. According to some conjecture, perhaps I have an extremely high chance of becoming an Empyrean god. Thus, I first created a little bit of momentum. After all, power itself is a kind of momentum. The battles in other places have also stopped. What's going on? Zichen asked again. Sandro said, Your Excellency, you're making things difficult for me. I don't know either. The god realm is so vast. I'm just a mere god king. How can I possibly care about other places? Where's that outsider following you? He's already left. He took the outsider with him. He said he won't interfere in the God realm's affairs for the time being. Sander wasn't lying, but he missed out on one thing. When the outsider left, he took a strand of his soul with him. Seeing Sander's expression, Zichen knew that he wouldn't be able to get anything more out of him. He turned and left. However, after taking just a few steps, he stopped and turned back. Sander, who had just breathed a sigh of relief, became nervous again. If you become a heavenly god, how do you plan to deal with me? Zichen asked. Sander smiled bitterly. My lord, don't make things difficult for me. Even if I really become a god, I can't do anything to you. Our region is so prosperous, but we still have to rely on you, my lord. Whoosh! Zichen's figure vanished. Sacred King Zenith let out a long sigh, feeling much more at ease. As for Zichen's previous question, he answered it almost without thinking. He would not think about it now. He would only think about it when that day came. His previous lightheaded state had completely disappeared, and he was completely awake. Zichen's arrival was a wake-up call for him. Fortunately, there was no problem with his response. Otherwise, he would be in trouble. If he was really killed by Zichen, everything he had would be reduced to nothing. After leaving Sanderson's residence, Zichen teleported to the area where the aliens were. The last question Zichen had asked Sanderson was just a casual question. If Sandro really did become an Empyrean god, given their friendship, Sandro would probably slap him to death immediately. Of course, his faction might not be destroyed, especially Yongding City. This was why Zichen had told Zhou Lina to prepare in advance. Yongding City had been built by Zhou Lina single-handedly. It was her blood, sweat, and tears. If a god appeared in the god realm, Zichen would definitely be affected, and his faction would be shaken. However, Yongding City would not be affected. This was because it was already on a large scale, and countless resources were coming in every day. Even if the structure of the god realm changed and a new god appeared, these cities would definitely not be destroyed. No one would go against the resources. At the same time, with Yongding City under his control, he naturally would not harm Zhou Lina. After all, she was an excellent assistant who could manage all the cities in an orderly manner. If Zhou Lina chose to leave, Zichen would agree. He respected Zhou Lina's choice. This time, Zichen chose to teleport. His speed was extremely fast, and there were no battles during this time. As he went deeper, Zichen gradually felt the pressure. It was as if there were some laws that were resisting his arrival. Not long after he went deeper, one after another, Grade 9 aliens appeared and blocked Zichen's path. Looking at these aliens blocking his way, Zichen said indifferently, "If you don't want to die, move aside. I'm here to ask questions, not to kill. What do you want to know, my lord?" An old voice came from behind. The crowd parted, and an old man walked forward. He looked at Zichen and said respectfully, "Lead greets Lord Zichen. You know me?" Zichen stared at him. "In the entire heavenly realm, only Lord Zichen can come to this place," Lead said with a smile. Lida smiled and said, "I wonder why Lord Zichen suddenly came here. Was the heavenly realm ceasefire you're doing?" Zichen asked coldly. Lead said, "We added fuel to the fire." "Why?" "The war has been going on for too long, and there are too many casualties. If this continues, the heavenly realm's population will dwindle." Zichen sneered. "You care about the heavenly realm's survival? If that news is true, and there really is a heavenly god's law descending, we still need people, don't we?" Lead said. "Moreover, we've suffered too many losses in this war. We can't afford to continue this war. So you're saying that you made the decision to stop the war and even found suitable candidates?" Zichen's eyes grew colder and colder. Lead said, "My lord, you must be joking. How could we have such authority? We just thought that those people might have a better chance. Perhaps they aren't the strongest in combat, but they're all intelligent. When will the heavenly god's law appear?" Zichen asked again, his eyes fixed on Lead. This old man doesn't know. Otherwise, he would have joined in as well. Lied smiled bitterly. After sensing that Lied's soul fluctuations were normal, Zichen asked again. Then tell me, do you think it's possible for me to obtain a heavenly God's law fragment? Smiling bitterly, Li shook his head and said, Impossible. Why are you so sure? My lord, you're extremely powerful. Once the heavenly God's law appears, it's very likely that you'll be able to obtain it. However, you won't be able to become a heavenly God, because you're not a heavenly God. At most, you'll be able to trap the heavenly God's law fragment and prevent another heavenly God from appearing in the heavenly realm. You won't be able to replace it. Clearly, Lied had guessed what Zichen was thinking. Why should I trap it? Can't I just give the heavenly God's law fragment to someone else? Zichen smiled faintly. But a heavenly God still appeared in the God realm. Actually, my lord, you don't have to worry at all. It's just like how we're enemies of the God realm, but we've existed for generations. Even if a heavenly God appears, I'm sure no one will make things difficult for you, my lord. Lied said. Why do you say that? My lord, your combat strength is unparalleled. You're the strongest person below the heavenly gods. Who wouldn't want to recruit such an expert? I'm afraid that as soon as a heavenly god appears, the heavenly god's emissary will trample all over your faction. Perhaps a heavenly god will personally come to recruit you. Zichen laughed when he heard this and said, I like what you just said. After saying that, Zichen's figure disappeared. Whoosh! Seeing Zichen disappear, the old man inwardly sighed in relief. Chapter 3207. After Zichen left, the old man's tense nerves finally relaxed. My lord, why were you so polite to him? A middle-aged man stepped forward. The old man glared at him and said coldly, What you really want to say is why I'm afraid of him, right? The middle-aged man's expression was a bit awkward. He's Zichen, the #1 heaven-defying human below the Empyrean gods. At this stage, no one can stand up to him. To put it bluntly, anyone he kills will die for nothing. The old man snapped. The middle-aged man didn't understand. Even if he's strong, we have many warriors who aren't afraid of death. Could it be? The old man snorted. Being unafraid of death and courting death are two different things. So what if we have many people? He'll kill us all one day. How could that be? The middle-aged man was stunned. As the first heaven-defying human to reach this level, what do you think? Right now, not to mention us, he could even destroy an entire world. So, before the situation is settled, anyone who provokes him will die for nothing. The middle-aged man's face was filled with shock. When they were talking earlier, Zichen had been using his spiritual senses to sense the old man, but he didn't find any fluctuations in the old man's soul. However, Zichen couldn't conclude that the old man was telling the truth based on this. But one thing was for sure. The heavenly realm hadn't had an Empyrean god for more than 20,000 years. Perhaps a new Empyrean god would appear. As for how a new Empyrean god would be born, Zichen didn't know yet. But he was sure that the situation wasn't good. There might be some recruitment, but it was more likely that Empyrean god would kill him with a single slap. Especially Sander. If he became an Empyrean god, not only would he be killed, the entire Tree City might be destroyed. Zichen returned to the Tree City and began to gather everyone to discuss the matter of retreating. No matter what, they couldn't stay here any longer. Zichen, what happened? Xiao No, who was at the city core, asked. The heavenly realm is peaceful for now, but there might be even more turmoil in the future. We have to retreat, Zichen said. Retreat? Jono couldn't help but be stunned. That's right, back to the Life Star. Let's go there to develop first. After the God world has settled down, we'll come back here. Or perhaps, they will never come again. Naturally, Zichen had the final say in this city, so retreating was only a matter of a word from him. However, the Tree City was huge, and there were many gods in it. There were also many people. It wasn't a place where one could just walk away. While they were preparing, Zichen returned to the Life Star. Sun Mingyao, Yi Qian, Shui Lin and the others were all here. Zichen gathered everyone and informed them of what might have happened in the immortal realm. After hearing this, everyone's expressions changed one after another. If that's the case, then everyone has to retreat, regardless of whether the future heavenly deity has any ill intentions towards us, Su Mingao said. Since the appearance of the Empyrean God is still uncertain, we should also participate. If someone becomes a heavenly deity because of us, I don't think they will make things difficult for us. The monk, who had reached the 9th rank, said excitedly. That's true, but aren't you afraid that the existence who becomes a heavenly deity will bite the hand that feeds him? After all, the number of heavenly deities is limited. We can't let people say that the position of heavenly deity is given to them by someone else every day, right? Moreover, this person isn't even as strong as the heavenly deity, Zichen said. The monk was stunned. He said, What else can we do? There's no other way. I can only stay in the God world and slowly watch the situation develop. Zichen said, I'll bring Patian with me. Once a heavenly deity appears in the God world, if we can't stop it, then I'll hurry back. Is running back a solution? Are heavenly deities unable to come to this world? LV Ping said. He had been brought back by Zichen long ago. Now, he had reached the 9th rank and was also the strongest spirit array master on the Life Star. Everyone looked at Zichen. He was the one who knew the most about the rules of the Life Star. Zichen said with a wry smile, If those sword servants can't come, it'll be difficult for others to come as well. However, if it's a heavenly deity, it doesn't seem to be too difficult. The others were also discouraged. If that was the case, it didn't seem to matter whether they returned to the Life Star or not. This was because if a heavenly deity wanted to kill someone, there seemed to be no one in this world who could stop them. Of course, we have to retreat. At this moment, Xingchen said, If the heavenly deities of the God world really appear, then we have to leave and go to the world that Li Ai mentioned. However, before we leave, we have to greet those heavenly deities and let them know that we've left. This way, for the sake of face, the dignified heavenly deities won't deliberately descend to the lower realm to destroy our forces. In the eyes of a heavenly deity, including a godly king, everyone was like an ant. If a heavenly deity took advantage of the situation to trample on them, it was still acceptable. However, no one had ever gone to the trouble of looking for ants and then specifically killing them. Moreover, a heavenly deity had just appeared in the God world. It was also time to reorganize. A heavenly deity wouldn't be so bored as to deliberately come to a Life Star and destroy everyone here. This is a good idea. If we can't stop a heavenly deity from appearing in the God world, then the moment they become heavenly deities will be the moment we leave. Zichen said. You have to take us with you. At least we'll be able to do the same. Xingchen said. Me too. Tyrant stood up and said, The seal on Lord Zheng's shield has been completely removed. Now is the time when it's at its strongest. I believe no one can break it. For the time being, nothing had happened, so this issue could not be discussed. Zichen once again returned to Tree City in the God world and supervised everyone's retreat. The teleportation formation lit up continuously. Jolina appeared from it. She was carrying a huge bag on her back. What are you carrying? Zichen asked, puzzled. It seemed that in the God world, everything could be put into a divine ring, unless it was a void beast's material. It's full of divine rings. The divine gems in the divine rings can't fit anymore, Jolina said with a smile. All of them are divine rings? Zichen was extremely shocked when he heard this. Each divine ring could fit many divine rings, and each divine ring could store many resources. Even if there was a limit to the amount of resources that could be stored in a divine ring because of the rules, if Jolina was carrying so many divine rings, wasn't it too much? What are you thinking about? We have almost 1,000 cities. How many resources are there? In the next few days, more resources will be sent here, Jolina said. Why? Zichen was puzzled. These are all your hard work. It's not a big deal. If you all leave, what's the point of me staying here? I'll go back to the Life Star. In the future, It will be more lively than the God world. That's why I'm going there to develop. Chapter 3208. Jolene began to withdraw resources without anyone noticing. After all, the cities still needed to function normally, and each one was extremely popular. If news of this leaked out, it would have a huge impact on the city's popularity. In the Tree City, everyone began to migrate. The mother nest left outside the Tree City also used spatial techniques to leave one after another. The ground was covered with tree roots, forming an inescapable net. At this moment, countless beams of energy passed through the net and headed for Jono. Although this withdrawal would cause a great loss of energy, it was better than being completely wiped out. A similar scene played out in the other two cities. There was no such thing as an airtight wall in the world. No matter how secretive Jolena's actions were, news of her gathering of resources was still leaked to some people. Among them, God King Sandro was the first to learn of this. Perhaps it was the effect of the rumors, but in any case, he became the strongest existence in the region. Ever since Zichen's appearance, God King Sandro had been much more low-key. When he heard this news, he finally smiled. However, he still didn't make it too obvious. At the same time, he denied the idea of his subordinates playing any tricks and even warned them to pretend they didn't know anything. Now that the realm of the gods had yet to change, Zichen was still the strongest expert in this world. If they were to look for trouble with Zichen now, it would be the same as looking for trouble. Clearly, God King Sandro didn't want to die, at least not now. Since Sandro hadn't made any moves in the region, the other factions didn't dare to play any tricks. Everyone turned a blind eye. There were close to 1,000 cities, and it took 3 years just to bring back the resources. During this time, Jolena gave up quite a few. In the end, she no longer had any misgivings and directly sold the cities at a low price. She even contacted Sandro's people. Sandro's people were very cooperative, purchasing many of Yongding's cities at a reasonable price. Although on the surface, Yongding City belonged to Zichen, it secretly belonged to Sacred King Sandini. Just like that, another year passed, and Jolena returned with a lot of resources. After 4 years, almost all the people in the city had left. The Heaven Martial continent on the Life Star had become very lively, but this place was getting more and more deserted. Jolena was the last to leave, and Zichen saw her off. "When are you leaving?" Jolena asked. "I'm waiting," Zichen said. "Be careful. You too. After you go back, you should rest well and rest until you're fully rejuvenated. In the entire Life Star, if nothing unexpected happens, you can build a city wherever there are people. Well, you can look for Jono. Maybe building a tree city is more meaningful," Zichen said. Jolena's eyes lit up. "Can I?" Zichen nodded and said, "Of course, that's our headquarters." Jolena left the God world with hope. At the moment she stepped into the teleport formation, she seemed to see the entire Life Star and the tree cities. After Jolena left, Heaven Breaker appeared in Zichen's world. Zichen said, "Let's go as well." A beam of light shot out of Heaven Breaker's horn, breaking through space and arriving at Heavenly God City. After entering the city, he went directly to the Heavenly God Manor. He and the others were already waiting there. When Zichen appeared, he asked, "Are you ready?" "Milord, everything is ready." He bowed. "Then let's go." On this day, the Heavenly God army left the Heavenly God Manor and arrived at the Life Star. The steward stayed behind, leading a portion of the Heavenly God guards to maintain order. He chose to stay in the city. He didn't want to leave, so he had to wait for the Heavenly God to return. Next, Zichen returned to Yongding City. There was no one left in the city, and the teleportation formation leading to the city had been destroyed long ago. The city was still bustling with activity. Without the haze of war, the god race was very relaxed. Zichen sensed that a storm was about to come. Several days later, a piece of news was sent to Zichen through a secret channel. This was a secret message left behind by Jolena. God King Sandro had left the God King Manor, and he had left in secret. Naturally, this was a coincidence. One of the God King's servants had noticed that the God King had been acting strangely these past few days, so he had sent this message. In the end, after further investigation, he discovered that the God King had already left, leaving behind only a substitute. Zichen knew that the appearance of a heavenly god wasn't a groundless rumor. Thus, he continued to investigate Sandro's whereabouts through this secret channel. In the end, he obtained a clue. Zichen began to search according to this clue, but his search was fruitless. God King Sandro seemed to have vanished into thin air. This caused Zichen's heart to jump. If Sandro went to another space and became a heavenly god, it would be troublesome. He couldn't stop him. By the time Sandro returned and became a heavenly god, he would be in trouble. But Sandro had left without a trace, not leaving behind the slightest trace of him. After thinking it over, Zichen suddenly thought of a method. He went directly to the former Eighth Realm. The battle there had ended immediately, and one powerhouse had survived. He only needed to inquire about that powerhouse's movements. Sure enough, the powerhouse of this area, Eric, wasn't as cautious and low-key as Sandro. When he left, he even seemed a bit smug. After paying special attention, Zichen easily found the God King's route. Comparing it to Sandro's possible route, Zichen guessed their purpose. The core city. This was the core city of the God realm. It was said that it didn't belong to any realm. It was also where the king ranking and general's ranking were located. Of course, in Zichen's mind, these two rankings were a complete joke. Could it be that they would become heavenly gods there? Zichen didn't hesitate to go to the core city. He'd never been to the core city before. This was his first time here. This was a bustling city. Unlike Zichen's Yongding city in the 10th domain, which was built later, this city was said to have been born at the same time as the realm of the gods. After that, there had never been a battle, and it had lasted until now. Upon entering the city, Zichen sensed that the laws of heaven and earth here were different from those of the outside world, but he couldn't put his finger on it. He settled down here and waited patiently. Half a month later, he saw God King Sandro, who had arrived late. Aside from him, there were 8 other God Kings. Among them was Eric. Chapter 3209. It was obvious that they were in a good mood. After entering the city, they chatted and laughed. In their own words, they were like gods. Zichen watched them enter the city with a smirk. They had no idea that Zichen had come here before them, and was even watching them. The 9 of them came from the 9 domains, but none of them were from the 9th domain. In other words, each domain had a god. Only the 9th domain, which was controlled by the Tower Battle God, did not have one. Sandro from the 10th domain had taken his place. Behind them, there were 9 other outsiders. Looking at the expressions of the 9 of them, they were extremely respectful. In the next few days, there was nothing out of the ordinary with them. Zichen kept an eye on them while looking around the city. During this time, he even went to look at the 2 lists that were practically a joke. He then saw that the names on the lists were in a row. Zichen had never heard of those names before. The true experts of the god world had died in the wars of the past 10,000 years. Even if they did not die, they were poisoned to death by the outsiders. Through Zichen's senses, he found that the laws of heaven and earth here were more chaotic than the outside world. It was like a weak zone. It was a vague feeling, and he could not be sure. But sometimes, the feeling was very strong, as if the laws of chaos could explode at any time and turn the city into nothingness. As for why he felt this, Zichen could not explain it. One day, Zichen was drinking in a restaurant. On another street, Sandro and the others were heading south to tour the city. Suddenly, a beam of light appeared in the sky, which turned into a ripple that swept across the city. The noisy city instantly quieted down. Someone at the next table was pouring wine. The wine left the pot and froze in the air, causing the person's movements to freeze. At the same time, Zichen found that he could not move, as if some force was controlling his body. His spiritual will, which had spread out in all directions, also froze. Everything around him was frozen. Was it space freezing? Or time stopping? Zichen was still conscious, but his thoughts were in chaos. 1. At this moment, the light of yin and yang appeared in his abdomen. Countless precepts surrounded his body. The wine cup in his hand fell onto the table and spun. The wine spilled all over the table. Then, it froze again. The spilled water hung in midair. Zichen had already returned to normal. He turned his head and looked around. This was the first time he had seen time and space stopped. The scene before him was like the most exquisite sculpture in the world. Zichen released his spiritual senses and found that the entire city had become like this. What Zichen didn't know was that it wasn't the entire city, but the entire God realm. The world of the God realm came to a complete standstill. Zichen flew out of the restaurant and looked up at the sky. He didn't know when, but a gap had appeared, and countless rays of light were descending from the gap. Standing within the light was a person. Clearly, he was also not affected by time stop. Zichen seemed to have thought of something. Releasing his spiritual sense, he saw God King Sandini and the others. Their bodies were frozen for a moment, but in the next moment, they were able to move on their own. However, this was only limited to the 9 of them. Behind them, the other 9 were still motionless. They looked around at the abnormality, and their expressions changed. They were shocked. "Come to me!" A voice came from in front of them. It was the figure of light descending from the sky. The 9 seemed to have thought of something. Ecstasy appeared on their faces as they flew forward. The figure of light looked at the 9 of them with an indifferent expression. Sandini and the others were extremely excited. Clearly, the chance to become heavenly gods was right in front of them. In the blink of an eye, they arrived in front of the figure of light and looked up, waiting for the descent of the heavenly gods' laws. But as soon as they looked up, they saw a figure appear in front of them. This was someone they didn't recognize. It was the 10th person present. The faces of the other 8 were filled with confusion. Only Sandro's expression changed drastically as he cried out involuntarily. "Zichen, it's you!" "Zichen?" The other 8 were stunned. Then, their expressions changed. In the heavenly realm today, there were many powerhouses and organizations who didn't know Zichen. However, there were very few who hadn't heard of Zichen's name. There were many legends about Zichen. Among them, the most terrifying was that he could kill sword servants. In the heavenly realm, sword servants were a fleeting existence. They could kill a rank 9 instantly. However, Zichen could kill sword servants instantly. He was fully deserving of the title of number 1 person in the heavenly realm. Right now, time in this city was in a state of absolute standstill. Nobody could move. If they hadn't been pardoned, they wouldn't have been able to move either. But why was Zichen unaffected? Zichen ignored Sandini's exclamation behind him. He didn't care what they were thinking either. Instead, he stared at the figure of light in front of him and asked, "Who are you? How dare you disrespect the emissary?" The other party shouted angrily. His voice was icy cold. Streams of rule-bending power went straight for Zichen. However, as soon as these powers fell on Zichen, they were shattered by the yin and yang forces. The other party's expression changed. He shouted, "How dare you?" Zichen said indifferently, "I'll give you one last chance. Tell me who you are, or you'll die. You have a death wish." The other party shouted angrily. He pointed a finger at the sky and slashed toward Zichen. The rule-bending power descended from the sky and formed a rule-bending sword. Wherever it passed, the still space was cut open. However, before this attack could land, Zichen unsheathed his saber. It drew an arc and landed on the rule-bending sword. The rule-bending sword split into 2. The figure of light retreated. As he retreated, his body was also split down the middle. Countless rays of light flew out of his body, and then gathered again to form a new figure of light. The moment his body took shape, there was no longer any arrogance on his face. Instead, it was filled with shock. "Who are you?" he cried out involuntarily. He couldn't believe it. "That should be my question, right?" Zichen looked at the other party. "My patience is limited. Tell me your background." The other party looked at Zichen, his expression fluctuating. Zichen gripped his saber tightly. Blue veins bulged on the back of his hand. Here's your stuff. The other party waved his hand, and 9 crystals flew out. The moment he saw the crystals, Zichen felt a powerful force. This force made him feel suffocated and full of threat. This was the law of crystals, a unique law in the immortal realm. It could be said that it was another high-level law. Once these people obtained these crystals, they would become heavenly gods. Chapter 32:10. Seeing that Zichen had changed targets, the silhouette breathed a sigh of relief. Looking at Zichen's back as he charged toward the law crystals, a trace of mockery flashing through his eyes. The law crystals were scattered in different directions. After a brief moment of surprise, Sander and the others frantically flew toward the 9 law crystals. They represented heavenly gods. Their charge was not without purpose. The 9 law crystals each exuded a different aura, and these auras corresponded to each of them. In other words, after these law crystals appeared, they were all connected to each of them. Among them, Zichen was naturally the fastest. He teleported in front of a law crystal and reached out to grab it. Swish! He instantly grabbed empty air, as if he and the law crystal were in a different space and time. How could this be? Zichen was stunned. He tried again, but he failed each time. At this moment, he had no time to be surprised. He instantly unsheathed his saber, and a total of 9 saber lights appeared, cutting through the sky and slashing toward the law crystals with heaven-defying power of laws. Swish! Swish! These 9 saber lights could even cut through space, but they could not shatter the law crystals. The two really did not seem to be in the same space. It's useless! The silhouette in the sky sneered. Zichen turned around, glanced at the other party, and said, "Is that so?" With that, he drew his saber again. This time, he did not destroy the law crystals, but instead slashed at Sander and the others. The 9 people flying toward the law crystals instantly paled and retreated in horror. With their strength, how could they be Zichen's match? But the moment the saber appeared, they felt their bodies being suppressed by an invisible force, and their movements became sluggish. They could only watch in horror as the saber arrived and swept past their bodies. Blood splattered. These god kings on the verge of becoming heavenly gods were killed just like that. There was no surprise at all. Looking at the rain of blood, Zichen turned his head and coldly said to the silhouette, "Find one and I'll kill one. Let's see how many people you can find." The glowing figure looked at Zichen as if it was looking at an idiot. Zichen had a bad feeling and immediately turned his head. He saw that the blood of the 9 people he had killed suddenly turned into balls of light and flew toward the 9 law crystals. While Zichen was still in shock, the glowing figure sneered. "Do you think this is an ordinary law crystal? Let me tell you, this is a law crystal that has long since fused with their souls. The moment the law crystal appeared, they had already become heavenly gods. Do you think you can stop it? What an idiot!" The blood-colored ball of light fused with the law crystal. The law crystal instantly erupted with a strong light, and the aura of a heavenly god surged out. The space around him was still in a state of stillness, and Zichen was still unaffected. However, the auras of the 9 celestial gods made it hard for him to breathe. His expression was extremely ugly. He didn't expect things to turn out like this. The glowing figure laughed. "What? You're still not running? Are you waiting to be killed?" At this moment, the law crystal had already begun to transform, and the first person had already manifested. It was Sandro. After manifesting, Sandro had already regained his consciousness. He smiled at Zichen and said, "Hello, Zichen." Zichen felt a chill in his heart. He knew that he couldn't harm these people now. In other words, Sandro's attitude toward him would change drastically in the future. Zichen retreated. Although he was unwilling, he knew that he had to leave. If he didn't leave now, he would die. "Don't go. Wouldn't it be better for the two of us to talk about our dreams? Zichen, do you have any dreams?" Sacred King Sandro, or Heavenly God Sandro, spoke. It was clear that he was in a good mood. Strong light erupted from Zichen's body. Countless power of laws enveloped the surroundings, causing the stillness in the space around them to return to normal. Heaven Splitter appeared. After sensing the auras of the heavenly gods, he was given a fright. A beam of light immediately flew out of his horn and tore through space. In the next instant, the two of them disappeared. Boom! Before the space where the two of them were could close up, a huge palm appeared and shattered the space. Heavenly God Sandro appeared beside the shattered space. He glanced at the black hole, and a cold smile appeared on his face. Zichen, this heavenly god will play with you. Whoosh! Zichen and Heaven Splitter reappeared in the City of Trees. At this moment, the space in the City of Trees was also completely frozen. Zichen didn't have time to guess whether other places were also like this. He immediately flew toward the teleportation array with Heaven Splitter. When they arrived at the teleportation array, the heaven-defying power of laws descended and removed the static state of the teleportation array. Following a burst of strong light, Zichen and Heaven Splitter disappeared. As the two of them disappeared, the teleportation array here shattered with a loud boom. This meant that the teleportation array, which had taken many years to construct, had completely disappeared. The path between the divine world and the life star was completely severed. Not long after, in the sky above the City of Trees, a giant palm print descended. This palm print emitted a divine light and surged with a boundless aura as it fell on the City of Trees. The City of Trees, which had already become a framework, completely shattered. Countless ancient trees that had lost their spiritual energy only turned into ashes and disappeared. In the blink of an eye, the 3 cities of trees Zichen had established in the divine world turned into nothingness. This place was once again a land of yellow sand, obliterating all traces of the life star in this world. However, the Yongding city was left behind. Zichen and Heaven Splitter arrived in a void. This was one of the connecting points of the teleportation array. As the two of them disappeared, this connecting point also exploded. Now that a heavenly god had reappeared in the divine world, Zichen no longer felt lucky. Everywhere he passed, all the connecting points exploded. This way, it would be even more difficult to reopen the teleportation array. As the connecting points exploded, Zichen appeared in the City of Trees on the Life Star. As soon as he left the teleportation array, it exploded. Rumbling noises reverberated in this giant city. Many experts who lived here sensed the abnormality. They all turned their attention to this place. When they saw Zichen appear, some of them wore strange expressions. "Time is tight. Come to the meeting!" Zichen's voice echoed in the sea of consciousness of some important people in the city. After a short while, they arrived at the meeting hall. There were more than 50 people, including Zichen's friends and some of his trusted friends. The divine world has 9 heavenly gods again. Chapter 32:11. Among the 9 great deities, there is Sandro. He is very hostile to me. Of course, the others are not much different. Therefore, I have to go. Next, I will leave this place to you. Zichen looked at everyone and said, "I will go with you." Tyrant and others stood up one after another. Zichen waved his hand and said, "That place may not be safe, so I will not bring too many people this time. Most importantly, this place also needs experts to guard it." Xingchen said, "We will go with you." Zichen said, "We will talk about this later. Now, I will make some simple arrangements. All the major matters here will be decided by Meng Yao. As for the other small matters, everyone can discuss it. Lina wants to develop the city. Jono, give her some tree spirits. At this time, Jono can also condense a human-formed doppelganger." Jono nodded, indicating that he will cooperate with all his strength. "Fina, if there is an enemy invasion, the battle arrangements will depend on you." Zichen looked at Fina and said. This time, he did not plan to bring Fina with him. Fina nodded in response. Next, Zichen briefly explained the other matters. Finally, he began to decide who to bring with him. Tyrant, Zhang Haoyan and others wanted to follow, but Zichen naturally could not bring them. This place needed experts to guard it. Otherwise, if an accident happened, it would be out of control. Zichen would not bring Devil Ape, Tyrant, Zhang Haoyan, Longhu's Sovereign, and the others. Xingqian strongly requested to follow. In the end, Zichen decided to bring 4 people other than Li Ai. They are Xingqian, Lei Ting, Brilliant, and Mingwei. The 4 of them were the people Zichen met on the Star Road. They were once members of the royal family of the ancient race. After everything was arranged, Zichen stood up and said, "It's time to go." Li Ai, Xingqian, and the other 3 entered his world. Zichen said goodbye to his friends one by one. "If that place really holds the secret to becoming an Empyrean god, then I will return the moment I become an Empyrean god." Zichen and Heavenbreaker walked out of the city. Heavenbreaker tore open space, and the 2 of them entered the spatial passageway. Under countless gazes, Zichen left the Life Star. Zichen did not immediately enter the void to search for the coordinates. Instead, he returned to the God world. After arriving in the God realm, he unleashed his aura and called out, "Sandro!" His voice exploded like thunder, forming ripples that spread in all directions. This place was at least a few hundred kilometers away from the core city. Sound couldn't travel there at all. However, Zichen didn't seem to know this and shouted again. In the core city, the 9 heavenly deities were standing in front of the figure of light, listening to its orders. However, compared to before, their expressions were a little less respectful. It was because they were already heavenly deities. If they wanted to kill this figure of light, they only needed to think about it. It was because they had mastered the laws of heaven and earth, which was much more powerful than Zichen's saber strike. "The God realm will depend on you guys. You can develop your forces, but unless you have something important to do, it's best that you don't leave the God realm." The 9 of them listened patiently. Right at this moment, Sandro's expression flickered, and a cold light flashed through his eyes. Whoosh! His figure disappeared. In the instant that Sandro disappeared from the core city, Zichen sensed a powerful threat and immediately teleported away. Boom! A huge tremor. The place where Zichen had been standing was transformed into a massive black hole. Black turbulence surged, and a hand disappeared. Zichen appeared 10,000 meters away and looked ahead. "Sandro, you've come! Impudent!" Sandro roared in anger as he swept his gaze toward Zichen. The space where Zichen had been standing shattered one after another. It was just a glance, but it was already so powerful. Zichen let out a cry of alarm and teleported away again. "You think you can escape?" A hint of mockery flashed through Sandro's eyes as his gaze followed Zichen's evasive movements. Wherever he went, space would shatter. Zichen let out a series of cries of alarm as he continued to evade. A short while later, Sandro finally felt bored as he looked at the disheveled Zichen. "All right, I've played enough. Little thing, tell me why you've come." Zichen stopped and asked. "How did you know I had something to say?" Sandro's eyes narrowed, and energy began to circulate within them. Zichen hurriedly corrected himself. "How did you know I had something to say?" Sandro laughed loudly with a smug expression. "Who do you think I am? The #1 heavenly god of the God realm. How could there be something I don't know? Little guy, if you have something to say, then say it." "I'm leaving," Zichen said. "Leaving? Are you going back to your life star?" "Go, I'll make the decision. As long as you stay on your life star, I won't kill you." Sandro was still laughing loudly. Zichen didn't say anything this time. Instead, he looked at Sandro. The smile on Sandro's face gradually faded. He narrowed his eyes, and his heavenly god power surged out towards Zichen. Sensing this destructive power, Zichen didn't dodge this time. Instead, he just stood there. The power rushed towards Zichen, then swept past him and enveloped the entire area. "You're not afraid of death?" Sandro's voice was ice cold. "Of course I am, but I don't think you'll kill me," Zichen said. "Why not?" Sandro asked. "You're a heavenly god. Why would you be so calculative with a god king like me?" Zichen said with a smile. "Although this flattery doesn't require much skill, I'll gladly accept it. It seems like every dog has its day. In the past, you were as weak as an ant in front of me. Although you've become arrogant for a while, everything is within my expectations. Sandro didn't try to hide his smugness at all. You're absolutely right, Heavenly God. Zichen nodded again. Sandro said calmly, Since you're so humble and disrespectful to me, I'll let you off the hook. Thank you, Heavenly God. Zichen cupped his fists in apology, appearing extremely sincere. You want to go to that place? Sandro's expression suddenly became serious. I want to take a look, Zichen said. Sandro said with a smile that wasn't a smile. It seems like you don't want to be suppressed by me, do you? What, are you going to ask for a path to become a heavenly god and then come back to kill me? Zichen immediately said, How could I? You've helped me today, and I can't thank you enough. How could I repay your kindness with enmity? You should know that I, Zichen, am a person who values kindness and kindness greatly. Sandro naturally had a good understanding of Zichen. After all, they were enemies, and it was important for him to understand his enemy's personality. He had used Ben Semlu and the others to suppress Zichen, but now, Zichen was once again bringing those people to his side. What do you want to know? Sandro asked. Chapter 32:12. The surrounding space had already been sealed off by Zenith, but this wasn't to prevent Zichen from escaping. Rather, it was because he already knew what Zichen was going to do. I don't know anything about that place, Zenith said. I've only heard from Zeus that the secret to becoming an Empyrean god lies there. Ben, do you know how Zeus' heavenly god died? Zichen asked. I can't think of any power in this world that could kill an Empyrean god, Zenith said. But you also didn't know what power could create an Empyrean god, did you? What do you think of Zeus' heavenly god's death? Zichen asked again. What else could I think of it? That's the business of those Empyrean gods. What does it have to do with me? Zenith said. Besides, do you think I was qualified to know such a secret back then? Zenith continued. The world only knows that I killed the son of a god, but they don't know that if I didn't come looking for him, someone else would. My goal was the coordinates that the son of a god spoke of, but their goal was to silence him. Who are they? Zichen asked. The 8 Empyrean gods, of course. Even though I don't know how Zeus died, only the other 8 Empyrean gods had the power to kill him. Empyrean god Sandini said. All I know about that place is its coordinates, and the danger it is in. Apart from that, I know nothing else. Zichen nodded. Judging from Zenith's expression, he probably wasn't lying to him. I remember asking you what you would do to me if you became an Empyrean god? Zichen asked. A cold smile appeared on Zenith's face. That's right. I didn't think about it back then, but now that I think about it, killing you is naturally the best option. Then why haven't you done it yet? Zichen asked. Aren't you going to run? Let's talk about it after you run, Zenith said. Zichen hesitated for a moment, then said, You won't break the rules, will you? Sandro understood what Zichen was worried about. He said, If the Empyrean gods have no business, they can't leave the god realm as they please. Zichen came to a sudden realization and nodded. The only worry in his heart was relieved. Goodbye. See you again. Heaven Breaker appeared beside Zichen and transformed into a longbow. An arrow pierced through the void. Zichen glanced at Sandro, then followed Heaven Breaker into the void. Empyrean God's spatial seal was something that even Heaven Breaker could break through. Empyrean God Sandro narrowed his eyes slightly, watching as the two left. Whoosh! The sealed space around them disappeared, and Heavenly God Sandro appeared. Sandro, why did you let him go? A heavenly deity asked. Empyrean God Sandro chuckled. It's rare for me to encounter such an interesting opponent. Wouldn't it be boring to just kill him? The 9 heavenly deities were ranked according to the order of their awakening. Sandro was the first to awaken, and he was the first Empyrean god. Speaking of which, this was all thanks to Zichen's saber strike. What do you plan to do now that you're going to restore order in the god realm? Do you want to open another realm? The heavenly deity from before asked. Empyrean god Sandro glanced down at the ground beneath his feet before shaking his head. No, this place is quite good. I'll take it. The 9th realm many years ago, the former 10th realm, was now the first realm of the god realm. 9 new realms would appear in the god realm, and the 10th realm would become an eternal part of history. Perhaps many years later, many people would believe that the god realm had always been ruled by the 9 heavenly deities, and that Empyrean god Sandro and the others had always been Empyrean gods. Zichen and Heaven Breaker entered the void, and Li Ai appeared beside Zichen. She was going to sense the coordinates left behind by the Empyrean god. Why did he let you go? Li Ai asked in confusion. At first, I didn't dare to say for sure. It could be considered a gamble, but I felt like I had a chance of winning. Zichen said. He was the adopted son of a heavenly deity, so he knew a few things about the heavenly deity Zeus. Moreover, he's experienced this tumultuous era, so even though he's become a heavenly deity now, he still has some worries in his heart. Worries? He's already a heavenly deity, so what's there to worry about? The AI still didn't understand. It's precisely because he's become a heavenly deity that he'll cherish what he has now. Do you think he'll be willing to give up everything one day? The AI came to a realization. Could it be that he's worried? Of course. The previous 9 heavenly deities are the best examples. Perhaps he'll be a heavenly deity for a very long time, but no one can guarantee that they won't end up like Pagoda Battle God and the others, never to return, right? Zichen smiled faintly. But why would he trust you? Apart from me, there's no one else he trusts in the god realm. Moreover, only we know the coordinates, right? Add to that my special battle prowess, and I have a very special identity, so perhaps he thinks I have a chance. Zichen said. Or perhaps, as the first heavenly deity, he knows some secrets that the other heavenly deities don't. Zichen thought of the first heavenly deity, Leah. At that time, several heavenly deities had voted to decide his fate. In the end, the first heavenly deity had directly rejected it. Although the other heavenly deities were dissatisfied, they still carried out the decision in the end. Regardless of the reason why Sandro had let Zichen go, Zichen had already embarked on the path that had the potential to become a heavenly deity. However, as to what lay beyond those coordinates, Zichen would have to wait until he got there to find out. The process of searching was long, because in the AI's memories, there were only those coordinates. There was nothing else. At this moment, Heaven Breaker was constantly tearing open space after space. As he walked through the space-time tunnel, images of space-time appeared one after another. The AI sensed the location of those coordinates. Those were things that had already fused into the depths of her soul. In this space-time, it was impossible to calculate a fixed amount of time. This was because they didn't know what path they were walking on. At one moment, they might have walked into the future, and at another moment, they might have returned to the past. Time was unstable here. As they continued forward, the AI, who had been shaking her head this entire time, suddenly said, I seem to have sensed it. We're not far from here. The AI sensed the fluctuations from the coordinates. Next, she released her soul and had Heaven Breaker proceed according to her senses. After going down the wrong path again and again, they returned to the right path again and again. Eventually, they arrived at a different space-time. Standing in the space-time tunnel, Heaven Breaker said in a low voice, I also feel it. We're approaching a strange space-time. The laws there are very unstable. It seems like there's a possibility of breaking through the barrier. Chapter 32:13. The new world was like a fairyland. Birds chirped and flowers bloomed everywhere. Rare beasts danced in the sky. Heaven and earth were filled with spiritual energy. It was extremely dense and of high quality. It was a holy land for cultivation. Zichen looked up at the sky, carefully sensing the rules of heaven and earth here. He found that the rules here were unstable. Sometimes they were strong as if they were about to break the barrier of the divine realm. Sometimes they returned to normal. Zichen didn't know what was going on. However, He was sure that this situation would increase his chances of breaking the barrier to become a divine realm expert. Xingqian and the other three appeared next to Zichen. After seeing the environment here, they were both surprised and happy. It's very suitable for cultivation. The only bad thing is that it affects spiritual thoughts, said Xingqian after checking the surroundings. Spiritual thoughts were greatly suppressed in this place. At this moment, with Zichen's competence, the range of his spiritual thoughts was limited to less than 100 miles. It was much worse than when he was on the Life Star. The ground here contains pure spiritual energy. It's like the purest spirit soil. No wonder it can nurture so many plants. Brilliant and Mingyu were very happy to see the flowers and plants around them. What's that? Thunder turned his head to look in the distance. There was a black light. This was a flat area. There were no mountains, so they could see far enough. That black light seemed to be moving toward them. Zichen released his spiritual thoughts. However, he still couldn't see what that black light was. It seemed to be a little far from here. Gradually, the black light reached the range of his spiritual thoughts. Then, it met with his invisible spiritual thoughts. The invisible spiritual thoughts seemed to turn into something tangible in just a blink of an eye. He screamed in fear. The rest of his spiritual thoughts retreated. However, more than half of them disappeared. Don't release your spiritual thoughts! Zichen retracted a small part of his spiritual thoughts and reminded the others loudly. What's that? Asked Xingqian. It's the wind. The black wind, Zichen said in a heavy voice. His expression was solemn. Earlier, he had only seen the general picture. The arrival of the black wind was much more terrifying than the spatial storm he had seen in the God King Heaven domain. That was because the void storm only tore through space, but this black wind was destroying the world. Behind it was a world of nothingness. Zichen had never seen such a terrifying black wind. It could even destroy his spiritual sense. Suddenly, Zichen remembered something. That was the abyss of the final floor of the Lightning Divine Hall. Wind would appear there, and the wind there was so strong that even heavenly deities would not dare to enter. Thinking of that terrifying wind, Zichen's heart tightened. Could it be that the two were the same thing? Just as his expression changed, Xingqian shouted, "The wind is coming this way!" The black wind formed a huge storm as it flew over. A rumbling sound resounded throughout the world. The speed of the storm was very fast. As it moved forward, it swallowed everything around it. Strange flowers, grass, and beasts were all sucked into it, becoming a part of the black wind. Xingqian and the rest felt that their bodies were already out of their control, as if they could be swept away by the storm at any time. They were overwhelmed with shock. Lei Ting raised his head to look at the sky, and his expression became solemn. Go! Zichen shouted. Energy was released from his body, enveloping the group. Then, he flew towards the distance. It was unknown if it was because of the black storm, but Zichen's world was affected, and he was unable to use the world to teleport. Fortunately, he had mastered extreme speed, and his speed was slightly faster than the storm. However, as Zichen fled, the black storm changed its direction and followed after Zichen. Seeing this scene, Zichen's expression changed greatly. Along the way, he changed his direction again. This time, the black storm did not follow after him. It seemed that the previous scene was merely a coincidence. The black line disappeared into the distance. The group stood there, looking at the traces left behind by the black wind, and were extremely shocked. It was as if a complete world had been directly torn apart. In their line of sight, there was a 10-mile-wide black hole ravine in the distance. How can there be such a terrifying wind? Liai was also extremely shocked. Such a holy land for cultivation should not be so uncontrollable. Such a holy land for cultivation was rich in spiritual energy. Of course, such a terrifying wind was abnormal. Look, the traces left behind by the black wind are healing, Lei Ting exclaimed. Everyone looked over and saw that the original black mark was now healing bit by bit. It was the convergence of countless amounts of spiritual energy, and then it turned into land. Immediately, countless spirit flowers bloomed on the land, and some rare beasts appeared out of thin air. It seemed that everything was going to return to its original state. It really is a land where spiritual energy of heaven and earth gathers. This is unbelievable. Zichen was a little surprised. In this way, it would not be long before this place became a holy land for cultivation again. At this moment, Zichen felt something and turned his head to look into the distance. He saw a person appear. That person was emitting divine light, and like a bolt of lightning, he flew directly toward the black hole. It's a member of the God clan! Xingchen also noticed the other person, and there was a hint of joy in his eyes. Since he saw other people, it was a good opportunity to ask about the structure of this world. At this moment, more members of the God clan appeared. They all flew toward the traces left behind by the black wind. No one knew what they were doing. Zichen led the others and flew forward. First, they needed to know what this place was. Gradually, they got closer to that place. Zichen realized that they seemed to be looking for something. They looked hurried as they shuttled back and forth from place to place. This place was healing. If they did not speed up, they might be buried by the healing spiritual soil. What are they looking for here? Xingchen and the others also noticed this, and they found it very strange. At this moment, there were still some small black winds left below. Whether it was Zichen or the members of the God clan who were looking for something below, none of them released their spiritual senses. They were only looking with their eyes. Zichen stood above for a while, but he did not see anything unusual. At this moment, all the members of the God clan who were looking for something below looked in the same direction at the same time. Zichen, Xingchen, and the others also felt a strange fluctuation. They all felt it and turned to look in the direction of the fluctuation. There was a bright light there. It seemed to be a fragment. Although it was not far away, it could not be seen clearly. It was as if there was a vague energy blocking all of this. It's a fragment of the Heaven God's Law. Chapter 32:14. The Heavenly God's Law Fragment. These words seemed to have a strange attraction that instantly made those gods go crazy. Those gods were all level 9. When Zichen heard that exclamation, his expression also changed. As the only person in the god realm who had seen the Heavenly God's Law Fragment, he knew very well what it meant. He came to this world to become a heavenly god. He did not expect to see the Heavenly God's Law Fragment as soon as he arrived in this area. This proved that there was a possibility of becoming a heavenly god here. Just as Zichen was thinking about this, a scream suddenly came from the front. In front of the Heavenly God's Law Fragment, a black wind appeared. Some of the gods at the front were swept up by the black wind. His body dissipated in the black wind and turned into nothingness. Damn it, it's the heavenly wind of annihilation. Run! The gods shouted from behind. Some of them quickly retreated, their faces full of fear. However, when some of them retreated, some of them rushed forward. They seemed to have lost their minds. Their eyes were full of madness. They rushed toward the black wind without hesitation, like moths to a flame in the dark night. The divine light around their bodies disappeared in an instant. They seemed to be unaware of this, and reached out to grab the Heavenly God's Law Fragment in front of them. The black wind fell on them. The bodies of the gods disappeared and became part of the black wind. When their souls were also destroyed, these gods let out a scream. There was no regret in their eyes. Instead, there was relief. The gods at the back watched this scene silently. There was no sadness in their eyes. Some of them even had envy in their eyes. It seemed that disappearing into the black wind was also a kind of honor. The black wind was disappearing, and the Heavenly God's Law Fragment in it was also disappearing. It turned into spots of light and scattered in all directions. The black hole there immediately turned into solid spiritual soil. Hundreds of flowers grew and bloomed. A few small mutated beasts appeared and jumped around the flowers. Zichen, who saw this scene with his own eyes, was shocked. Annoyed voices came from the front. Some people cursed again and again. They were very emotional. This damned abandoned land. It gives people hope and despair. Let's go. There will be another chance. After all, so many years have passed. This damned place, are we really going to exhaust everyone to death here? The marks that Black Wind had left had all been restored. Those level 9 warriors of the God clan hung their heads in low spirits. Some of them seemed to have lost control of their emotions. Zichen's group of 6 people and 1 beast immediately attracted the attention of many people. However, their gazes only swept past Zichen for a moment before landing on Lei Ai and the other 2 women. Originally they were dejected, but their eyes immediately lit up. Then, their breathing became hurried, and greed appeared in their eyes. It was as if they had seen a heavenly deity's law fragment. This was especially true for the few people who had lost control of their emotions earlier. At this moment, they were even more so. If it weren't for the others holding them back, they would have already attacked. Zichen's expression did not change. These people were all rank 9, not even rank 9. Excuse me, where is this place? Zichen came to the front of the crowd and asked the greedy crowd. Everyone's gazes forcibly moved away from the beautiful faces of Lei Ai and the other 2 women and landed on Zichen. Their expressions were strange. A middle-aged God clan member's expression changed a few times. He said, "You don't know where this place is?" Zichen threw out a jug of wine and said, "I'm not sure. Can you tell me more about it?" The middle-aged God clan member took the jug of wine, and his eyes lit up again. The greed that he had been suppressing seemed to be about to go out of control at this moment. He said in a low voice, "Are you new here?" As soon as this sentence came out, it was like throwing a spark into a pile of dry wood. The aura around them instantly became violent, and the breathing of those God clan members became heavier. However, this time, the targets of greed were not only Lei Ai and the other 2 women, but also Zichen and the other 2 women. During this period, they had seen the divine space ring the most. Zichen frowned slightly at the abnormality around them and said, "Yes, we are new here." Boom! As soon as Zichen's voice fell, the aura around them became violent. The God clan members around them did not hesitate to fly towards Zichen and the others. They were very fast, like streaks of lightning, and a powerful aura surged around them. The space around them was instantly filled with pressure, making it difficult to move. Seeing this scene, Zichen let out a sigh. He had no intention of fighting. He stood in place and a circle of ripples appeared around him. These ripples were black and shrouded the people he had brought with him. They spread out in all directions. Wherever the ripples passed, the black circle of light expanded and met with those God clan members who had lost their minds. The black circle of light was like an ordinary black light. It swept past those God clan members and continued to spread out to a distance of 1,000 feet. 1,000 feet became a dividing line. Within 1,000 feet, those God clan members who had rushed towards Zichen were all split in 2. This also included the God clan member who had answered Zichen's question. Outside 1,000 feet, all the God clan members who had sensed danger and retreated in time were still in shock. Their faces were full of horror. The corpses of their companions on the ground were actually so glaring. Zichen did not look at those corpses. Instead, he looked at those God clan members 1,000 feet away and said coolly, "Now I wonder who's willing to answer us. What kind of place is this?" Wherever his gaze passed, all the God clan members were horrified. The scene previously was too shocking. Its lethality was even greater than the annihilating heavenly wind. After all, the annihilating heavenly wind could be detected in advance and even avoided. But the other party's attack appeared silently. If not for them being relatively far away, they would probably have become corpses too. Looking at the crowd that was horrified to the extreme, Zichen casually looked at a God clan member and said, "You then tell me what this place is." Your Excellency, this is the Forsaken Land," that person said in horror. "Tell me in detail, what is the Forsaken Land?" Zichen asked again. "It's a place where we can't get out anymore, and no one cares if we live or die. The annihilating heavenly wind here is everywhere. Touching it is certain death," that God clan member said. Zichen asked. What's with the heavenly god law fragments? The god clan member sighed and said, facing the terrifying annihilating heavenly wind, no one can survive. But every time the annihilating heavenly wind passes, it will also leave behind some heavenly god law fragments. If one is lucky enough to obtain them, they will become a heavenly god and leave this region. However, so many years have passed, but there are only a scant few who have become heavenly gods. Most people have died here. As for us, we barely survived. But before long, we will also be killed by the annihilating heavenly wind. Hearing what the other party said, this confirmed Zichen's guess. This region could indeed become a heavenly god. They did not come to the wrong place. Since this place is so vile, why did you guys still come? Zichen asked curiously. Chapter 32:15. Zichen was very surprised to hear the name Zeus Empyrean God again. As the AI's father in name, the AI's expression changed when he heard his father's name. Zichen asked for the reason and received a very surprising answer. Some of the people here were here because of Zeus Empyrean God, while others were here because of an Empyrean God called Jerilei. Among the 9 Empyrean gods of the god world, Zichen was very sure that there was no Empyrean god called Jerilei. When he thought about what was happening in the god world, Zichen vaguely guessed the reason. The 9 Empyrean gods of the god world weren't eternal. They would appear every once in a while, or when something unexpected happened, a new Empyrean god would take their place. Just like the 9 new Empyrean gods of the god world. Now that the 9 Empyrean gods had appeared, many people in the god world knew this secret. They knew that they were just god kings in the past. Then, when Lienya and the others became Empyrean gods, where did the other people who knew about it go? Why hadn't there been any news of this secret for so many years? After seeing the god world's space-time freeze, Zichen guessed that there was a problem with their memories and that they were erased by a mysterious power of law. This wasn't difficult. Take Zichen for example. He controlled the law of life stars. As long as he wanted to, he could use the law to slightly change the memories of some people. However, the strength of these people wasn't very high. Besides this, there was also the second reason. Those who knew about it were sent to this abandoned land and left to fend for themselves. This was just like the lightning divine palace back then. When a new cycle of reincarnation began, almost all of those old people had died in battle, and only an extremely small number of guides were able to survive. As for the truth, it had been buried in history. If Zeus Empyrean God really did bring those people here to cover up the truth, it would make sense. However, there was one thing that wasn't right. In the AI's memories, Zeus Empyrean God had never come to this place. He only knew a set of coordinates, and his death seemed to be related to this set of coordinates. However, these people were saying that Zeus Empyrean God deliberately lured them here. Why? Zichen guessed that Zeus Heavenly God didn't know what was going on here. Otherwise, he wouldn't have told the AI the coordinates. There was no way Sandro would kill the son of the Heavenly God after the death of the Heavenly God for this place. Some mysteries were solved, but new mysteries were also revealed. Zichen decided not to think about it anymore and asked, "Is there a gathering place here?" The God race expert shook his head and said, "The wind of annihilation here has no pattern. It can appear at any time." Zichen nodded. "As long as there is a wind of annihilation, there will be a Heavenly God law fragment, right?" "Yes, sir." "Where will you go after becoming an Empyrean God?" Zichen asked again. "It is rumored to be a mysterious region that is connected to this abandoned land. However, only by becoming a heavenly deity can one sense that region and enter it." After learning what he wanted to know, Zichen took his men and left, leaving the divines behind. After leaving this area, Thunder asked in confusion, "Why didn't you take them with you? They can't survive here anyway. If you take them with you, they will be grateful to you." Zichen said, "Maybe." Looking at Zichen's gloomy mood, Thunder was even more puzzled. Those people were all at level 9. Of course, they were strong. If they were brought to the Life Star, they would be a great help. They'd been living in this place for a long time. They don't have the will to fight anymore. Moreover, their minds are twisted. If you take them with you, I'm afraid not many of them will be grateful to you. Most of them have done things that we can't imagine because of their twisted minds. Zichen looked at Thunder and said, perhaps some of them can still stick to their hearts, but not many of them. And if one or two of them have a twisted mind, it will be a disaster to the Life Star. When we find them and kill them, the people they have killed can't be revived. Perhaps one of them will be a level 9 expert in the future. On the Life Star, the cultivation had to be done step by step. Thus, when they reached the Earth realm, they would comprehend the principle. As long as they were on the Life Star, when they became King God realm experts, they would have their own ranks. Moreover, the Life Star today didn't lack experts. Thus, Zichen wouldn't take them with him. Because in this place, the brave ones had died long ago when they couldn't see any hope. The ones who stayed were those who didn't want to die. Even if they were put on the Life Star, when they were in danger, they would think about how to survive instead of fighting with the enemy. They were different from the ones living in the last layer of the King God Heaven territory. Although the environment there was harsh, the level 8 and 9 experts were still fighting for their lives. There were no cities but camps. They could still trade and live a normal life. However, these people weren't normal. They were all crazy and had lost their minds. The facts proved that everything was as Zichen had guessed. In the next place that Zichen went, all the God Clan warriors who saw the AI and the other two would become crazy like hungry wolves who saw food. If they didn't have the courage to die, Zichen could help them. There was no day or night in this place. There was no sunlight, but it was bright everywhere. The vanishing wind would appear at any time and place without any pattern. Even Zichen didn't dare to touch this vanishing wind. Thus, he joined the army that was searching for the heavenly gods' principal fragments. After the vanishing wind disappeared, they would rush into the black gully to search for the heavenly gods' principal fragments. Every time, Zichen could see the fragments, but he couldn't get them. That was because the vanishing wind would appear next to the fragments. There was only one vanishing wind, but its power was extraordinary. All the attacks that touched it would shatter instantly. Zichen, who had tried many times to no avail, doubted whether his predecessors could get the heavenly gods' principal fragments and become heavenly gods. Zichen, quick, the principal fragments! The AI's voice arose. Zichen didn't hesitate and flashed to her side. In front of him, a heavenly god's principal fragment appeared. Around the fragment, the vanishing wind was spinning, and the heavenly god's principal fragment was disappearing. Swoosh! Zichen unsheathed his saber and chopped down. The saber light, like a waterfall, went straight for the vanishing wind in front of him. This slash contained Zichen's strongest rule-bending power, and it was also the slash that could kill a sword servant. However, as the saber light fell on the vanishing wind, it immediately dissipated. Even his strongest move was useless. It seemed that he could only wait until the vanishing wind and then get the principal fragments. However, Zichen knew very well that when the vanishing wind disappeared, the heavenly god's principal fragments would disappear. Therefore, he doubted whether a heavenly god would appear in this world. Or perhaps it was just a desire to live on for the few lucky ones. Chapter 32:16. Seeing the heavenly god's law fragment flying towards him, Zichen was stunned. He was in disbelief. He had originally guessed that no one would become a heavenly god in this place. He did not expect this to happen. The other members of the Shin clan also noticed the abnormality. Hence, many of them looked at Zichen with crazed gazes. Zichen naturally ignored these gazes. He reached out and grabbed the heavenly god's law fragment. At this moment, the heavenly god's law fragment suddenly glowed. It disappeared from his side and went straight behind him. Perhaps it was a coincidence, but the heavenly god's law fragment directly hit a level 9 god and disappeared in a flash. Everyone else saw this as well. Their gazes shifted away from Zichen and landed on the lucky Protoss. Boom! The heavenly god's law fragment entered the body of the lucky god. Immediately, a violent aura erupted from the body of the lucky god. This aura drove the rules of heaven and earth, and caused a violent storm. Everyone nearby was blown away. During this time, 2 of them accidentally hit the sky wind of annihilation. They screamed and disappeared in the wind. Under that frightening storm, Zichen and the rest had no choice but to retreat. At this moment, their faces were filled with shock. A heavenly god's law fragment had appeared just like that? A heavenly god was created just like that. They kept retreating, waiting to see what would happen. Unlike the few of them who were obviously rational, these people flew towards the lucky god as if they had gone mad. All kinds of energy attacks fell on the lucky god. However, these attacks were blocked by a tangible power of rules as soon as they reached the lucky god. They could not get close at all. This is a heavenly god! This was the first time Li Ai had been so close to a heavenly god. Although she was the son of a heavenly god, she had never seen her real father. Zichen was also surprised. He said, "A heavenly god can be created with a heavenly god. And so quickly. This is unbelievable." He had seen Sandro and the others become heavenly gods. Now, he was seeing a god become a heavenly god with his own eyes. As the strongest existence in the world, the conditions for a heavenly god to appear were so simple. Of course, it was not easy to obtain a heavenly god's law fragment. The energy in front of him went berserk again, and a tyrannical aura spread out. Within this aura, there was the pressure of a superior being. A burst of complacent laughter rang out between heaven and earth. The vibration of this laughter could resonate with the souls of the Shin clan. Many of the god race people in the surroundings fell to the ground in pain. If the laughter had been any louder, they would have died. This was a heavenly deity. The strongest existence in the world was not a height that could be reached through cultivation. Li Ai was shocked, and so was Zichen. What happened today was obviously a good thing for him because he could see the hope of becoming a heavenly god. However, the initial condition was a little troublesome. It required the heavenly god's law fragment to automatically break free from the control of the heavenly wind of annihilation. There was no envy or shock in the eyes of Xingqian and Lei Ting. Both of them were frowning as if they were very worried. Brilliant Light and Bright Moon were also expressionless. The heavenly god's aura grew more and more terrifying. Zichen had no choice but to retreat again with his people. The god clan members no longer attacked in a frenzy, but their eyes were filled with envy and jealousy. "Ants like you dare to attack a heavenly god?" At this moment, a cold voice came from the mouth of the god clan member who had become a heavenly god. Then, a divine light with the heavenly god's law swept out in all directions. The divine light of the law flew past like the sharpest blade in the world, cutting open the bodies of the god clan members. These god clan members did not even have time to scream before they were killed by the divine light of the law. The other god clan members were terrified. Some immediately knelt on one knee to show their submission, while others turned and ran. Looking at the fleeing god clan members, a hint of sarcasm flashed in the eyes of the newly ascended heavenly god. "In front of a heavenly god, you ants still want to run?" As the heavenly god finished speaking, he struck out with his palm. The void shook, and a terrifying aura gathered in the sky, turning into a palm print that fell down. The palm print fell from the sky and landed on the fleeing god clan members. Their bodies exploded, turning into a rain of blood that fell from the sky. The fleeing god clan members were all killed in an instant. The remaining god clan members were terrified. At the same time, they felt lucky that they had chosen to submit. Otherwise, they would not have been able to escape death. After killing the fleeing god clan members, the heavenly god's eyes fell on the god clan members who had submitted to him. He said coldly, "Ants like you deserve to submit to a heavenly god? Die!" As soon as he said the word die, a strong light flew out and killed all the god clan members who had submitted to him. Zichen's group, who had retreated a long time ago, smiled faintly when they saw this. If they really brought such a person to the Life Star, it would be a total disaster for the Life Star. At this moment, the heavenly god's eyes swept over Zichen. "Let's go!" Zichen's figure flashed. A light flew out from his body and landed on the others. Then, he disappeared in the blink of an eye. With Zichen's current strength, he was not qualified to fight against the heavenly god. Hence, he chose to leave without hesitation because he saw the murderous intent in the heavenly god's eyes. Seems like one can become a heavenly god in this area. Li was a little excited. With Zichen's strength, he had the highest chance of obtaining the heavenly god's law fragments. After teleporting away from that area, Zichen continued to search for Black Wind. If it weren't for the twisted personalities of the people here, Zichen would have stopped talking to the heavenly god and asked him some questions, just like how he talked to Sandro. However, the heavenly god couldn't. After 15 minutes, Zichen frowned and turned around. At this moment, a cold voice came from the horizon. "Do you think you can run away?" It was the heavenly god's voice. When the others heard it, their faces changed. That heavenly god had caught up with them. "Go!" Without hesitation, Zichen used instant world teleportation again. As soon as he left, a terrifying palm print fell from the sky, landing on the spot where he had been standing. With a loud boom, the ground exploded. A bottomless palm print appeared, and terrifying energy scattered everywhere. Several hundred miles away, Zichen's group appeared. "Why is he chasing us?" Li was puzzled. Previously, many people had retreated far away. Not all of them were dead. Why did the heavenly god want to kill them? Zichen shook his head, indicating that he didn't know. Actually, there were two reasons. First, the heavenly god wanted to kill them. Second, it was for Li, Brilliant, and Ningyu. Chapter 32:17. According to his estimation of time, 3 days had already passed. During these 3 days, that lucky heavenly god hadn't given up on pursuing Zichen. Zichen was always able to detect this heavenly god in advance and escape. However, what he didn't understand was why this heavenly god was pursuing him. Moreover, this heavenly god was pursuing him so relentlessly. Was it just for Li and the others? However, wasn't this heavenly god a little too persistent? "Don't run! Even if you run to the ends of the earth, I'll still kill you!" The heavenly god's voice sounded from behind him again. It was clear that he wouldn't give up until he killed Zichen. Zichen didn't reply. Instead, he continued to teleport away. After a short while, the heavenly god caught up again. "There's no need for you to run with him. My goal is only to kill him. You can stay behind and assist me." This time, he was speaking to Xingqian and the others. "Only kill Zichen? Are you sure you only want to kill me?" Zichen's voice sounded. "How can the words of a heavenly god be false? As long as you obediently accept your death, I promise I won't kill anyone else." The heavenly god's voice sounded from behind him. "I won't kill anyone, male or female." Zichen's brows furrowed again upon hearing this. It seemed that this was far too unusual. Heavenbreaker appeared from Zichen's world. He glanced at the heavenly god behind him, and he said, "Stop running and fight him." "What?" Zichen glared at Heavenbreaker and he said, "Are you crazy? That's suicide." Heavenbreaker said, "Believe me, although heavenly gods are very terrifying and definitely not on the same level as divine kings, you can still exchange a few blows with this heavenly god." "Really?" Zichen looked at Heavenbreaker. Heavenbreaker didn't reply to Zichen. His figure flashed, and he disappeared again. Zichen gritted his teeth. Being chased like this wasn't a solution. He might as well give it his all. He stopped. Meanwhile, Xingqian and the others retreated several thousand feet away from Zichen. Their speed wasn't far off from that of the heavenly god. Zichen had only just stopped, and the heavenly god had already arrived before Zichen. "You finally understand." The heavenly deity stood in front of Zichen and smiled. "Waiting for death is the only way for you to be liberated." Zichen looked at him and asked, "Why do you want to kill me?" The other party mocked. "Do heavenly gods need a reason to kill people?" Zichen said. "You can't die without knowing why, right?" In the surrounding space, there was a strong pressure. Under this pressure, Zichen's teleportation technique was suppressed. As if he felt that victory was within his grasp, the celestial god said. It's useless for you to escape. The moment I became a celestial god, I knew that I had to kill you. Zichen's expression didn't change. In other words, I'm the only one? Of course, the heavenly deity said. This heavenly deity is reluctant to kill those beauties. He only wanted to kill Zichen, and he only found out about this the moment he became a heavenly god. Zichen frowned, unable to understand why this was the case. Or perhaps it was better to say that he understood, but he didn't dare to make such a guess. This was because he guessed that the appearance of the heavenly god's law fragment was not a coincidence, but a deliberate act to make the heavenly deity kill him. After killing me, where are you going? Zichen asked again. Where I should go, the heavenly deity said. Just as the rumors say, there is a special place that only heavenly gods can sense. After I kill you, I will go there. Zichen nodded and said, I understand. Saying so, he charged forward. With a flash of light in his hand, the power of yin and yang appeared. Zichen chose to take the initiative to attack. With the long saber in hand, the light of the lightning body erupted, fusing with the heaven-defying laws of yin and yang into the saber. He unsheathed the saber. He was probably the first god king in history to dare attack a heavenly god. The heavenly deity looked at the charging Zichen, a disdainful smile appearing on his lips. He extended his palm and struck out. The heavenly god's law fragment coiled around the palm and clashed with the incoming saber. The essence of these two different powers was extremely different. It was like a stone and an egg. Perhaps the difference in size was not large, but the essence was completely different. The result of the collision between the two was naturally the shattering of the egg. With a huge boom, the oncoming saber light shattered. The heavenly deity's palm knocked Zichen's saber away and landed on his chest. With another boom, Zichen coughed up blood and was sent flying. A terrifying power entered his body, destroying his life force. In his world, a dozen or so mountains collapsed and several rivers dried up. His vitality was instantly drained. In the outside world, Zichen was sent flying. However, his mind was extremely clear. He was not dead. The heavenly deity's attack had not killed him. A hint of joy appeared in his heart. In fact, he had even filtered the new information in his mind. If the heavenly deity's attack was limited to this, then he would be able to block at least 10 more attacks. With Heaven Breaker, he could block 10 attacks from the heavenly deity without dying. Naturally, he would not die. Whoosh! In another direction, the space was distorted. The Netherworld clone flew out from it. As soon as he appeared, the Netherworld power around him surged wildly. Then, it turned into a giant Netherworld beast and tried to devour the heavenly deity. The Netherworld opened its mouth. It was as if a gap had opened in the sky. Countless rule-bending powers descended from the sky. Destroy! The heavenly deity smiled coldly and said one word. It was as if his words were the law. Boom! The Netherworld beast's body exploded. The clone coughed up blood and was sent flying. It was not that the clone was not strong enough. However, as long as he was in this world, he had to abide by the rules of this world. Under these rules, the Netherworld beast could not defeat the heavenly deity. Naturally, there was no way he could win. This was just like when he fought with the Sword Servant. The Netherworld beast had already devoured the Sword Servant, but could not refine him because of the rules. Although he was Zichen's clone, he was not a defiant. Therefore, he could not violate the rules of this world. Whoosh! His figure kept retreating. The Netherworld clone disappeared. Facing the heavenly deity, his true body with the defiant rules still had a chance. However, he had no chance at all. Zichen charged again. The long saber in his hand slashed down again. The saber light shattered. Zichen's body was sent flying again. Seeing that 2 attacks had failed to kill his opponent, a hint of surprise appeared in the heavenly deity's eyes. Die! His words were the law. Waves of power with strange rules fell on Zichen's body, trying to forcibly extinguish his soul. Buzz! On Zichen's body, the power of the defiant rules flowed and dispelled the mysterious power. The level of the defiant rules could not surpass the heavenly deity rules. However, at this moment, the high quality of the defiant rules was fully displayed. After exchanging several blows with the heavenly god, dozens of mountains in Zichen's world were destroyed, and many rivers formed from spiritual energy had dried up. Chapter 32:18 Heavenbreaker appeared in Zichen's world and directly broke through the space sealed by the heavenly gods. He then left with Zichen. After leaving the sealed space, Zichen could once again perform long-distance teleportation. He took Li Ai and the others with him and teleported away. The turbulent energy settled, and the heavenly god's figure appeared. He looked at Zichen, who had disappeared, and a hint of surprise appeared on his face. That guy was actually able to block his attack and not die. This was truly shocking. However, his opponent was only a divine king. Although it was a little troublesome to kill him, he could still kill him. Moreover, he clearly saw that his opponent had been injured in the previous exchange. Zichen teleported to another place. At this moment, his face was clearly filled with excitement. This was because he had never thought that he would be able to fight against a heavenly god. This was a heavenly god, the most powerful being in the immortal realm. However, there was also something wrong. When he had faced Sandro, his opponent was already ridiculously powerful. He didn't have the courage to fight back at all. If Sandro wanted to kill him, it would be as easy as flipping over his hand. Now, he could actually exchange a few blows with a heavenly god. Could it be that heavenly gods were like this? Heavenbreaker, who was standing at the side and constantly waiting to break through the sealed space, glanced at Zichen and guessed his thoughts. If you compare the laws of nature to water, then a drop of water is also a law. A bowl of water is also a law. The excited Zichen instantly came to his senses. Then, realization dawned on him. So that was how it was. The fragments of laws from before weren't complete. Many of them had been obliterated by the heavenly wind of annihilation. They were equivalent to the laws of nature of a drop of water. However, Sandro and the others had complete heavenly god's laws. This was different. Not long after, the heavenly god caught up again. The two sides exchanged a few blows, and Zichen fled. With Heavenbreaker's help, the sealed space couldn't trap him at all. Moreover, his battle prowess wasn't weak, so he didn't fear the heavenly god. Of course, the two sides couldn't fight for a long time. Otherwise, he would die. In the following period of time, many of the gods in this abandoned land learned that a new heavenly god had appeared. At the same time, they also learned that this heavenly god was hunting down a divine king but couldn't kill him. In fact, this divine king could even exchange blows with the heavenly god. This news wouldn't be believable if they hadn't seen it with their own eyes because it was too inconceivable. Even many of the Protoss who saw it with their own eyes found it hard to believe. Deity kings and heavenly deities were not existences on the same level. How could the two of them fight against each other? This situation was perfectly verified for a very long time. The heavenly deity glanced at the celestial being. That celestial being's body stiffened, and with a loud bang he died. This was the true difference between a deity king and a heavenly deity. The chase had been going on for a long time, probably more than a few months. During this period of time, the two sides fought many times. Every time, Zichen would escape. Celestial could only helplessly chase after him. He had already used his strongest abilities, but he could not trap his opponent at all. That exotic beast that could break through space was extremely troublesome. After another round of pursuit, Zichen stopped and looked at the heavenly deity who was chasing after him. "What will it take for you to stop? Either you die, or I die," the heavenly deity coldly said. Zichen thought about it seriously and said, "Then it's better for you to die." Behind him, black wind appeared. With a rumbling sound, the heaven annihilation wind swept over. Sensing this heaven annihilation wind, the heavenly deity's expression changed slightly. "If you choose to enter the heaven annihilation wind to commit suicide, that's fine too," The heaven annihilation wind was getting closer and closer, moving this space. At this moment, Zichen chose to teleport, so he would be affected. However, he still did not move and looked at the heavenly deity in front of him. A hint of ridicule flashed in the heavenly deity's eyes. The heaven annihilation wind approached. The heavenly deity stretched out his hand and sent out a palm. The palm instantly arrived beside Zichen, shattering the void where he was. When the palm was sent out, the heavenly deity's figure flashed into the distance. The power of the heaven annihilation wind was extremely terrifying. Even a heavenly deity could not resist it. At the moment when the heavenly deity attacked, Heavenbreaker broke through space and brought Zichen away. At this point, Zichen understood one point. The heaven annihilation wind here should be the same as the black wind in the abyss. Even the heavenly deity did not dare to casually step into it. The heaven annihilation wind whistled forward, leaving behind a ruined scene. However, in the blink of an eye, Zichen appeared in the ruined scene left behind by the heaven annihilation wind. He was the first to arrive here. Clearly, he was looking for the heavenly deity's nomological fragment. Soon, many other members of the divine clan arrived and joined in the search. A moment later, the heavenly deity came again. "Run!" Some god race members roared in fear and fled without hesitation. During this period, they had already formed a habit. They knew that if they did not escape quickly, they would soon die in the hands of the heavenly deity. When the heavenly deity appeared, Zichen flashed away. Boom! At the place where he was originally standing, a palm struck down. Inside, a heavenly deity's nomological fragment shattered into nothingness. The heavenly deity did not speak. His figure flashed and disappeared. The pursuit was still ongoing. Under such circumstances, Zichen could only ensure that he did not die. It was completely impossible for him to obtain the heavenly deity's nomological fragment. In the end, after this pursuit continued for a long time, Zichen had no choice but to make a new choice. He could either leave this world or find a way to become a heavenly deity. Zichen stood in the void, surrounded by endless spatial power. Only Heavenbreaker could travel freely. If Zichen was alone, he would quickly get lost. "There are heavenly deities here. We have no chance at all." Liai and Xingchen stood to the side. "Are we going to just go back like this?" Zichen frowned, his expression ugly. The heavenly deities here could not kill him, but that did not mean that the heavenly deities of the god realm could not kill him. Last time, Sandro had let him go. If he returned empty-handed, there would not be a second chance. Xingchen and the others stood there in silence. Ever since they came to this world, the four of them seemed to be in a different state. "Do you have anything to say?" Heavenbreaker looked at Xingchen and the others. He had long since noticed that there was something wrong with them. Xingchen hesitated for a moment, then said in a low voice, "If you are unwilling, then let's make a bet." "Bet? What kind of bet?" Zichen looked at Xingchen in confusion. "Up until now, the laws of heaven and earth that suppress power have never disappeared. This is the main reason why you are unable to become a heavenly deity. Now let's make a bet. Let's bet on a place where the laws of heaven and earth do not exist," Xingchen said. "When we get there, I have a way to make you a heavenly deity." Xingchen's tone was very firm, but Zichen was still confused. How difficult was it to become a heavenly deity? How could it be so easy to break through? However, he had known Xingchen for a long time. He was usually a man of few words, so he definitely would not joke about something like this. "Where is that place?" Zichen asked. "In the heavenly wind." Xingchen's answer gave Zichen a fright. Chapter 32:19. Xingchen's words had a huge impact on Zichen. Even heavenly gods would die if they encountered the heavenly wind of annihilation. Xingchen actually said that there was an opportunity to become a heavenly god inside. How was this possible? Being stared at by Zichen, Xingchen smiled awkwardly and said, "Of course, I said that this is a gamble. There's a chance of success, and there's also a chance of failure. It doesn't seem possible, right?" Zichen smiled bitterly and said, "Even if there's no suppression of heaven and earth in that space, how can we enter?" Xingchen said, "If that's what you're worried about, then don't worry. We have a way to block the heavenly wind of annihilation and protect you." Zichen was very surprised. He didn't think that Xingchen and the others would have such a method. No wonder the four of them insisted on coming here. "Even if we enter, how can we break through without the help of heavenly god laws?" Zichen said. "This method won't work," Xingchen said solemnly. "If, and I'm saying if, there really isn't any suppression of heaven and earth after we enter, we have a way to help you become a heavenly god." Zichen was stunned upon hearing this. Xingchen, who had been silent all this time, seemed to have become very confident this time. Xingchen changed the topic and said, "However, we can only block the heavenly wind of annihilation for you once. If there's still suppression of heaven and earth after we enter, then there's nothing we can do. Of course, the possibility of this is not high. I feel that the chance of success is as high as 80 or even 90%. Xingchen had already anticipated all kinds of dangers. Even so, there was still an 80 to 90% chance of success. This was undoubtedly feasible. However, looking at Xingchen's serious expression, it was clear that there was still a big problem. "What are you worried about?" Zichen asked. "If you can't resist the heavenly wind of annihilation even after you become a heavenly god, then only death awaits you," Xingchen said solemnly. "This is what we're worried about. If you become a heavenly god but die in the heavenly wind of annihilation, in that case, our gamble this time will naturally be a complete loss. This is the biggest problem." Then, Xingchen looked at Heavenbreaker. Heavenbreaker shook his head and said, "The heavenly wind of annihilation is extremely special. I can't penetrate it with my current strength. It could destroy all space, and even all power. Furthermore, I don't think the four of you are capable of blocking the heavenly wind and allowing Zichen to enter the core." Xingchen sighed and said, "To tell you the truth, with Zichen's uniqueness, it's impossible for him to refine a heavenly god law fragment." "What?" Zichen's expression changed as he looked at Xingchen. "Your identity is special. Even if you obtain the heavenly god's law fragment, you won't be able to refine it. However, we did not stop you in the beginning because both the AI and your doppelganger could use it," Xingchen said. "What exactly do you know?" Zichen looked at Xingchen. Xingchen said, "Only when you are free from the control of the laws of this world can you become a god. This is your only path. Previously, we did not stop you because we hoped that there would be a god to help you. But from the looks of it, it seemed impossible. Perhaps in the entire world, including the life stars, the only place that is not restricted by the laws of heaven and earth is the space in the heavenly wind of annihilation," Zichen said. "In other words, I don't have a choice?" Xingchen said. "If you want to become a god, that is indeed the case. Of course, we can leave. We don't have to take this risk." "Leave? Then where can we go?" Zichen smiled bitterly and said, "Back to the Life Star? With my identity, if nothing changes, I will probably be killed soon, right? After I die, the others will not survive. Countless creatures will die, and a new cycle will begin." Zichen knew very well what the Life Star was like in the past. It was a world where even core origin realm experts could become old monsters. It was a world where breaking through to the heaven realm was an extravagant hope. The laws of heaven and earth were infinitely suppressed. The God clan in the God world regarded the creatures on the Life Star as ants. Because of his appearance and his intimidating power, the Life Star had broken the barriers of the laws again and again. Eventually, it had become a world that could resist the God world. However, if he didn't move forward, everything on the Life Star was like a bubble that would disappear shortly. He would die, and so would his friends. Rather than waiting for the unknown death and destruction, it was better to take a risk. This was the choice Zichen had often made during his journey. His road ahead had never been smooth sailing. Without hesitating for a long time, Zichen said, "Then let's take a risk." "You have to think carefully," said Xingchen. "I'm clear. If I die, you guys leave this world and return to the Life Star. Take the others and leave. Find a safe place to live. Under Heaven Breaker's guidance, Zichen returned to this world one more time. Heaven Breaker didn't stop Zichen because he understood that Zichen's destiny was to fight for a future. The god of heaven in this world suddenly lost his perception of Zichen. This made him feel strange. Did the other party leave this world? Of course, it was impossible. If the God King could leave this world, someone would have done so long ago. Indeed, not long after, he sensed Zichen's aura again. A cold smile appeared on the corner of his mouth. He thought that the other party must have used some secret technique. Thus, he continued his pursuit. After a while, he saw Zichen again. This time, the other party didn't run away. Murderous intent flashed in his eyes. Just as he was about to take action, a voice came from the front. Don't be hasty. I plan to leave this world. Oh? The god of heaven looked at him, squinting. A black light appeared behind him. The vanishing wind was coming. I'm going there to check, said Zichen. Perhaps there's a powerful force there. The god of heaven smiled. You've made a wise choice. Very well, I won't kill you for now. He was well aware of the power of the vanishing wind. Even he, a god of heaven, couldn't survive in there, let alone a mere god king. Xingchen and the others walked toward Zichen. Liai and Heaven Breaker stood there, while Zichen's netherworld clone hid in the void. Are they going to die in a group? Seeing Xingchen and the others, the god of heaven's eyes rippled. His gaze fell on Brilliant Light and Mingyu. It would be good if the man died, but it was clearly not worth it for the two beauties to die. However, he didn't stop them. This was because there was another beauty nearby. At the same time, it was also because the vanishing wind was approaching. Even he would have to pay a price. In the distance, the figures of the other god tribe cultivators appeared. When they saw this scene, they were stunned. Are you guys going to be all right? Zichen asked as he looked at Xingchen. Of course. Xingchen and the others came to Zichen's side. Their hands began to form seals. Then, the power of the sun, moon, star, and lightning appeared from their bodies. They gathered in front of them, forming a huge defensive light barrier. When the god of heaven saw this, he knew that Zichen was really going to enter the vanishing wind. Thus, he was even more shocked. However, the sneer on his face didn't decrease in the slightest. No one could survive in the vanishing wind. This was an eternal truth. Chapter 32:20. As the annihilation wind approached, the surrounding space was torn apart. The spiritual soil beneath Zichen and the others' feet was pulverized into nothingness. One after another, the power of the wind landed on the light barrier. Within the light barrier, 4 types of energy circulated, resisting the power of the annihilation wind. The heavenly god in the distance began to retreat, but his eyes were fixed forward. Heaven Breaker also left with Liai. Whether they lived or died depended on Zichen. The light barrier formed by the 4 types of energy didn't even last a breath before it exploded. Seeing this, Zichen's expression changed drastically. The heavenly god's lips curled into a smile. This was normal. No one could stop the annihilation wind, including the heavenly gods. Liai looked forward worriedly. Heaven Breaker's eyes were filled with understanding. After the defense shattered, Xingchen and the others' expressions were extremely calm. This was how it should be. The power of the sun, moon, star, thunder might be terrifying, but if the annihilation wind couldn't be destroyed, then they would be disappointed in it. The black annihilation wind landed on the 4 of them. Their bodies began to disintegrate layer by layer, just like the many god tribe members who encountered the annihilation wind. They were disappearing. How can this be? Zichen's eyes widened as he shouted. This is normal. There is only one chance. Zichen, you have to seize it! Xingchen's voice sounded. There was no fear of death. His voice was calm and indifferent. Didn't you say that you would be fine? Zichen said loudly. His heartbeat quickened, and he felt a long-lost heartache. He had always treated the four of them as friends. "This is our mission. We have been waiting for this day for a long time. This day has finally come, and we are very happy. Don't be sad. Seize this one and only chance. If you don't succeed, you will die too." Xingqian and the others disappeared into the annihilation wind. However, unlike the other God tribe members, they died directly. After the four of them disappeared, 4 balls of light were left behind. The 4 balls of light emitted the light of pure power. Sun, moon, star, thunder. The moment he saw the ball of light, Zichen felt a familiar aura. His expression instantly changed as he exclaimed in shock, "Heavenly Book!" The heavenly tomes were divided into 3 volumes, namely Heaven, Earth, and Man. Man represented essence, Qi, and spirit, while Earth represented the power of the 5 elements. Zichen had already obtained both scrolls. As for the Heaven Scroll, Zichen had no clue as to what the Heavenly Book of the Heaven Scroll was. Now, he knew that the Sky Scroll was the power of the Sun and Moon Xingqian. Xingqian and the other 3 were spirits formed by the heavenly tomes. Xingqian was confident that he could block the sky wind of annihilation because he believed in the power released by the heavenly book after he transformed into his true form. The 4 heavenly books of sun, moon, star, and thunder turned into balls of light and revolved around Zichen, forming a screen of light formed by the fusion of the 4 energies. When the annihilating heavenly wind met the light screen, it was as if countless blades had landed on the 4-colored energy light screen. The light barrier was distorting, but it blocked the annihilation heavenly wind and was not torn apart. "Stop hesitating, let's go!" Xingqian's final voice rang out. At this moment, Zichen had no time to be sad. With a tap of his foot, he flew toward the center of the sky wind of annihilation. As he moved forward, the sky wind of annihilation became more and more terrifying. The light screen formed by the heavenly book twisted crazily, as if it would shatter at any moment. Perhaps it was because of Zichen, but the sky wind of annihilation, which had been moving all this time, suddenly stopped moving. Instead, it stopped moving like a tornado. The god of heaven appeared in the distance, looking at the raging storm with an ugly expression. Heaven Breaker and the AI were in another direction. How could this be? The AI clearly saw what was happening. Xingqian and the other 3 had said that they could block the sky wind of annihilation for Zichen, but they had actually sacrificed themselves. So that's how it is! Heaven Breaker came to a realization and looked ahead. Zichen entered the sky wind of annihilation and continued to fly forward. The 4-colored light screen seemed to be on the verge of collapse, but it was very tenacious and resisted the sky wind of annihilation. The 4-page heavenly book revolved around Zichen, and its speed became faster and faster. Finally, Zichen arrived at the center of the sky wind of annihilation. Compared to the sky wind of annihilation outside, this place was like an independent space, and it was very quiet. After arriving here, the haze in Zichen's heart dissipated. It was as if he could see the sky without a canopy. His senses became incomparably sharp, and the world that was previously suppressed was once again perceived. If Zichen was compared to a frog, then the previous Zichen would be living at the bottom of a dark well. But today, the well cover was suddenly removed, and light fell into the well, allowing the frog to see the sky for the first time. Perhaps in his eyes the sky wasn't big, but it was the first time he saw the real sky, and he saw what it looked like outside the well. His state of mind began to change. The light screen formed by the 4-page heavenly book disappeared, and the heavenly book continued to revolve around Zichen. Finally, it entered Zichen's body. The heavenly book entered abdomen and then merged into the world. Zichen's world began to change. The 3 heavenly books of heaven, earth, and human were collected today. However, Zichen wasn't happy at all, because the last 4 pages of the heavenly book belonged to Xingqian and the other 3. The 4 of them insisted on coming with a tough attitude. Apparently, they had already met their destiny. Buzz! Zichen's world had ripples. The entire world seemed to have many big holes, and flows of heaven and earth energy from an unknown place poured into the world. When the heaven and earth energy poured down, Zichen's world was also undergoing earth-shaking changes. This change was the same as when he had broken through to level 9 and returned to the Life Star. The perfect spirit seed of his world had merged with the complete heavenly book. This time, it was completely perfect. The barrier of the world became more stable, and the natural rules of the heavenly book merged with Zichen's world. While the world was undergoing earth-shaking changes, Zichen's soul aura began to grow in this space in the center of the heaven wind of obliteration, without the suppression of the natural rules of heaven and earth. His soul became stronger, but the power of the natural rules didn't appear. This meant that he was still equivalent to a divine king of the divine world. The heaven wind of obliteration wreaked havoc on the spot, preventing the world from healing. Many members of the divine race appeared in the distance. Looking at the heaven wind of obliteration that had stopped, their eyes were filled with shock. The divine race in the distance frowned. He had a strange feeling. However, he still didn't think that the other party could survive, because even if he became a divine race, the heaven wind of obliteration could still be destroyed, unless he stayed in it forever. If he could only stay in the heaven wind of obliteration, what was the difference between that and death? In another direction, Li Ai stared ahead nervously. Heaven Breaker's eyes were also filled with anticipation. Just as Xingqian and the other three had said, this was Zichen's only chance. Buzz. Chapter 32-21. The power of laws was the foundation of a celestial god. Once one mastered the laws of heaven and earth, one would become a celestial god. Right now, Zichen's world had given birth to laws of its own. These were laws that belonged to him alone. The moment the laws were born, Zichen's soul aura grew to a limit. The barrier of heaven and earth that he could not sense before appeared once again. This time, the barrier of heaven and earth was even more stable. Even the wind of annihilation could not destroy it. However, at this time, he was already a celestial god. The power of laws lingered around his body, and a powerful aura surged. Perhaps the aura of the celestial god that surged around Zichen was too terrifying, causing the wind of annihilation to tremble. In the wind of annihilation, there was a whining sound, as if a living creature was crying. A strong and dangerous aura descended from the void. Sensing this aura, Zichen's expression changed instantly. He, who had become a celestial god, did not expect that he could still sense danger. He raised his head and saw that in the sky above this space, there was a black wind, and in the wind, there seemed to be a pair of eyes staring at him. The wind fell from the sky, filling this space, wanting to destroy Zichen. Zichen raised his hand and struck out with a palm. The palm print went against the sky, surrounded by the celestial laws. This was the attack of a celestial god. When the laws met the wind of annihilation, they were quickly annihilated. Before they could reach the wind of annihilation, they were destroyed. Obviously, if the wind of annihilation fell, what awaited Zichen was certain to be death. Zichen raised his head and glanced at the wind around him. Light flashed around his body, and a protective light shield appeared. This light shield was his world. A perfect world that had merged with the heavenly book. With the perfect world protecting him, Zichen rushed out of this space. The light shield around his world met with the wind of annihilation. The light shield began to tremble and then distort, as if it could collapse at any time. This was Zichen's world, and the foundation of all his power. Once it collapsed, what awaited him would be death. Fortunately, the area of this sky wind was not very wide, and Zichen used his full speed. In a flash, he passed through the black wind and arrived outside the sky wind of annihilation. Arriving outside the wind, Zichen looked back again and saw that the space he had been in had been completely filled with the wind of annihilation. Vaguely, Zichen seemed to see a special beast standing in the center, coldly staring at him. Shwa! In the next moment, the black wind disappeared, and the spatial passage from before reappeared. The heavenly wind of annihilation, which had been in a stationary state, continued to move forward. Looking at the disappearing black wind, the world light barrier around Zichen disappeared. At this moment, he still felt like he was in a dream. How did he become a heavenly god just like that? Xing Chen's guess had come true. In other words, they had expected this to happen. However, the four of them had been sacrificed in exchange for him to become a heavenly god. Zichen did not feel good about it. He was not as happy as he thought he would be after becoming a heavenly god. Shwa! The space beside Zichen tore open, and the AI and Heaven Breaker appeared. Heaven Breaker looked at Zichen and said, "Don't blame yourself. This is their mission. I think that they have been waiting for this day to come." Even so, the disappearance of the four of them still made Zichen feel very uncomfortable. "You actually broke through!" At this moment, an indifferent voice rang out. The heavenly god appeared in front of Zichen and looked at Zichen in shock. Many god race members had already gathered in the distance. Under normal circumstances, they would come here to search for the heavenly god law fragments, but this time, they stood extremely far away, not daring to approach at all. This was because two heavenly gods were confronting each other. Zichen said, "Yes, I broke through. Next, it's your turn to die." "Humph, shameless boasting! You and I are both heavenly gods. What can you do to me?" The heavenly god coldly snorted. "Even though we are both heavenly gods, there are differences in strength. In my eyes, you can only be considered half a heavenly god." After saying this, a long saber appeared in Zichen's hand. The unique heavenly god law power of his world merged into the long saber. The long saber began to vibrate, releasing a dazzling light. Zichen unsheathed the saber. A dazzling saber light, carrying the power of law, shot toward the heavenly god in front of him. Looking at this saber, the heavenly god's expression changed greatly, and he quickly retreated. However, the saber light was even faster. In the blink of an eye, it had arrived in front of him. The heavenly god punched. With a loud boom, the saber light shattered. The heavenly god's body was forced back. There was a wound on his fist, and his blood dripped. As the blood fell to the ground, the spirit flowers on the ground bloomed once again. Zichen lowered his head to look at the long saber in his hand. This was the 9 Extremes weapon of the Life Star, one of the 9 strongest weapons. However, at this moment, after he had poured his power into it, it showed signs of collapsing. This was also the reason why Zichen had attacked earlier. Otherwise, the long saber would have collapsed on its own before he could kill the enemy. Zichen knew that this long saber, which had accompanied him for a long time, was no longer suitable for the current him. He put away the long saber and flashed forward. This time, he was truly teleporting. Arriving next to the heavenly god, he punched. Boom! Heaven and earth shook. The heavenly god in front of him coughed up blood again, retreating with a frightened face. Zichen's expression was indifferent. His 2 fingers formed a sword, and the power of law gathered at his fingertips. The power of law still carried Zichen's unique heaven-defying essence. Swoosh! The sword light shot out. This attack didn't use any weapon, but it was much stronger than the previous one. The heavenly god's face was filled with fear and shock. He urged his power to the limit, trying to block this sword energy. Puff! The sword energy approached, breaking the heavenly god's defense and piercing his forehead. The heavenly god's eyes widened. There was a sword hole in his forehead, and blood gushed out. His body fell backward. He was dead. A heavenly god was killed just like that. The god clan members in the distance were terrified. They dreamed of becoming heavenly gods, but they had never thought that they would see a heavenly god being killed with their own eyes. This made them suffer an infinite shock, and they stood there stunned. Zichen looked at the heavenly god's corpse. In his memory, heavenly gods were incomparably powerful. A heavenly god's heart could not die for many years, and a heavenly god's bones could never be destroyed. This was obvious from looking at the clone. However, the heavenly god in front of him, strictly speaking, was not a pure heavenly god. He had only obtained a few heavenly god's law fragments, and his soul was only slightly stronger than a god king's. As for his physical body, it was no different from an ordinary god king's. Just as Zichen said, he was only half a heavenly god. When he encountered Zichen, coupled with his natural restraint, he naturally died. At the same time, Zichen, who had become a heavenly god, sensed another space. That space had an obvious attraction to heavenly gods. Only heavenly gods who had grasped the laws could sense that space. Chapter 32:22. After the celestial god died, Zichen kicked his body into the black hole in the void. A destructive wind appeared and fell on the celestial god, shattering his body. This was destroying the body and erasing the evidence. However, if Zichen hadn't done so, the other god clan members here might have eaten this celestial god's flesh and blood. Under the respectful gazes of the god clan members, Zichen left. "Where do you plan to go?" After leaving the previous place, Heavenbreaker looked at Zichen and asked him. "I'm not going anywhere. I've just become a celestial god. I still have a lot of room for growth." The changes in Zichen's world had allowed him to break through. However, that was only the first step. His body still had other changes to come. For example, the quality of his soul, the transformation of his body, and the transformation of his own energy. In addition, Zichen's world was also transforming. This transformation required a long process, but Zichen could afford to wait. As long as he didn't return to the Life Star, there would be no danger there. Next, Zichen would need a long time to grow. However, this place was obviously not suitable for him. Therefore, he returned to his own world. The Netherworld clone appeared and took Li AI to this world to search for the celestial god's law fragments that were almost impossible to obtain. Heavenbreaker followed the two of them in case something unexpected happened. Zichen stood in his own world. Since the fusion of the heavenly books, his world had been changing every moment. The energy between heaven and earth had become purer. Spirit mountains appeared one after another. At the same time, the rules of this world had become stronger. He was in the world, and there was an undetectable force that entered his body and strengthened it. With enough time, his body would become as strong as his clone and become a real celestial god's bone. At that time, he would be a real celestial god. He walked in this world, quietly watching the changes and feeling the power of this world. Not long after, he came to the center of this world and saw a huge lake. Or rather, it was an ocean. This was his core energy. He had never been afraid of consumption in battle because of this ocean of energy. The laws of the world descended and fused with the core energy, causing the energy to change. Once this energy left the world, it would become Zichen's unique yin and yang energy. However, this yin and yang energy could not be converted into core energy. After all, there was only one Zichen's world, and it was not divided into yin and yang worlds. The core energy of the world could only be one type. However, this did not hinder Zichen's strength. In fact, from another perspective, Zichen did not need to deliberately absorb yin and yang energy to recover. This sea of energy could absorb and store energy on its own, waiting for Zichen to use it in battle. Zichen's figure flashed. He stood above the sea of energy and sat down cross-legged. He slowly stretched out his hand, and two streams of water flew out from the sea below. When the water flowed into his palm, it immediately transformed into the power of yin and yang. He immediately put his palms together, and the two forces of yin and yang forcefully rubbed them together. There was no rumbling sound, only a blinding light. When he released his palms, a small yin-yang lightning lotus had appeared. This was a technique that Zichen created when he first grasped the power of yin and yang. It was very difficult for the two types of energy to fuse, but now it was easily done. In addition to his deeper understanding of the power of yin and yang, it also had a lot to do with him becoming an Empyrean god. The new Empyrean god's laws were of a higher level. Through the power of these laws, Zichen could see the essence of the power of yin and yang. He gently waved his hand, and the yin-yang lightning lotus flew forward. Countless ripples appeared on the surface of the sea of energy, and one stream of water after another flew out from the sea. After these streams of water flew into the air, they would transform into the power of yin and yang. Then, they would fuse on their own and become lightning lotuses. They were like well-trained soldiers, constantly appearing. They formed a square formation behind the first lightning lotus and flew into the distance. In the blink of an eye, the number of lightning lotuses exceeded 10,000. Each lightning lotus was surrounded by the power of laws. Once it exploded, its power would be unimaginable. Zichen calmly looked at the lightning lotuses. He calmly watched as their number increased, but he didn't feel the slightest bit of strain. All of this had already reached his limit when he was at grade 9. However, he was still far from the limit of an Empyrean god. Countless lightning lotuses appeared in his line of sight. As for condensing these thunder lotuses, it was only a single thought. With a thought, all the lightning lotuses disappeared into thin air, turning into the energy of heaven and earth. Dispersing them tested one's control of power more than condensing them. Of course, if the scattered lightning lotuses didn't dissipate into energy, but turned back into water and fell into the sea of energy, then that should be the limit of Zichen's control of power. The heavenly thunder wings appeared behind Zichen. This 9 extremes weapon had greatly helped Zichen on his path of growth. Unfortunately, at his current level, the heavenly thunder wings were no longer of help to him. The long saber had also lost its use. Right now, other than passively making himself stronger, he had another method, which was to improve his control of the power of yin and yang again. This was another essential difference between him and other Empyrean gods, apart from his identity as a heaven-defying cultivator. Time didn't exist in cultivation. Zichen also couldn't sense the passage of time. In this abandoned land, the Netherworld clone and the AI were still looking for the fragments of the Empyrean god's law. During this period, they saw many fragments, but they didn't succeed once. I really suspect that this annihilation wind isn't giving us the fragments of the Empyrean god's law, but deliberately destroying them, the AI said somewhat angrily. She had failed too many times. The Netherworld clone smiled. He had long since given up hope. Your soul is connected to the real body. The real body has already broken through. When will you become an Empyrean god? The AI looked at the Netherworld clone and asked. The clone and Zichen's soul were connected. Originally, as long as one of them broke through, the other would also break through. The Netherworld clone pointed to the sky and said, There is a suppression between heaven and earth. It can't be broken through. The real body is already extremely lucky to be able to break through. Moreover, this is destiny. Destiny? The AI asked, puzzled. I don't know what it is exactly. This is what Patian told me last time. He said that when he breaks through, it will be when I break through. The Netherworld clone smiled and said, He told me not to be anxious because he also doesn't know when he can break through. You believe in Patian? He only knows how to sleep all day. He must be talking in his sleep. There's no harm in believing, right? After all, it's still hope. Time passed. In the blink of an eye, 1,000 years had passed. God Realm. After the appearance of the 9 Empyrean gods, the God Realm ushered in a new order. The 9th region, which was originally occupied by the Pagoda Battle God, began to be deliberately excluded. The races from the alternate spacetime seemed to have gone crazy and gathered in that region, as if they were planning to turn that region into a barren land. Although the other regions were also dangerous, they were much less dangerous than the 9th region. As one city after another was destroyed, all the god race began to migrate and leave the 9th region. Chapter 32-23. The order of the god world was re-established. The 9th region, where Tajan used to be, was abandoned when the 9 gods appeared. As a result, the creatures from another dimension began to occupy this region. Heavenly God City, the most prosperous region of the 9th region, was now empty. In such a big city, it was so quiet that it was almost dead. Everyone had left. But Lersilio walked out of Heavenly God residence and walked toward a street corner. There was a dessert shop there. He used to come here often to buy desserts for the gods. The owner of the dessert shop had left long ago. The shop's door was wide open, and there was nothing inside. But Lersilio stood outside the shop and looked at the empty shop. A bitter smile appeared on his face as he walked to the next place. He came to an old mansion. It was a mansion given to him by the gods. It was not far from heavenly god residence. In the past, it was worth a lot. There was no one in the old mansion. He had sent all the servants away. All the resources that belonged to him were distributed to them. After leaving the old mansion, Butler Silio walked around the city and returned to heavenly god residence. Many memories appeared in his mind. There was the time when Pagoda Battle Heavenly God had just become a heavenly god, the time when they first came here to develop. There was also the time when he first met Goddess Ichien. Even now, he could still remember the distance and coldness in Goddess Ichien's eyes. The relationship between father and daughter was very bad. Goddess had always been against it. That was until he suggested to help Zichen. Obviously, this was a roundabout method. Only then did the relationship between father and daughter gradually improve. In the end, they let bygones be bygones. He still remembered Zichen's nervousness and apprehension when he first came to Heavenly God residence. The second time he came, Zichen seemed to have brought the mother nest as a greeting gift. A smile appeared on Butler Silio's face. Outside Heavenly God's city, countless creatures from another space-time were approaching. Behind them were many experts from other races. Soon, everything related to this place will be buried by time. Butler Silio let out a low sigh. He was unwilling to accept this. A glorious city from back then was gone just like that. He still could not believe that the departure of the gods that day was truly an eternal farewell. He had to wait. He had to wait for the gods to return. At the same time, the butler also felt very fortunate that in this world, there were still people who knew about the Pagoda Battle Heavenly Deity. That day, Heavenly Deity's city was destroyed, becoming an expanse of ruins. This matter only caused a small ripple in the divine realm. Many people didn't even know who the Pagoda Battle Empyrean god was, let alone an old housekeeper who was destroyed along with the city. At this point, there were only 9 regions left in the divine realm. Many of the ancient aristocratic families seemed to have forgotten about the previous 9 celestial gods and began to marry the new 9 celestial gods. The other heavenly god estates left behind by the divine world disappeared one after another. The 9 heavenly gods led by heavenly goddess Lienya were being erased by the divine realm. Next would be the world of the 9 new celestial gods, led by Sandro. The rules here would be written by them. 10,000 years later, everything was on track. On this day, the 9 heavenly gods gathered in Sandor's first heaven for the first time in 10,000 years. Before we go to the god nest, we have to settle that matter, Zenny said. There's nothing to discuss. This time, we will go to the god nest to help the alien tribes expand their territory. It will take at least several thousand years. During this time, we will let the other forces find their weaknesses and invade the life stars. We can't participate in this kind of thing, Heavenly God Eric said. Zenny nodded. The reason why they could become heavenly gods was because of the alien tribe's support. After this matter was settled, they needed to help the alien tribes expand the god nest. It was said that the god nest was a special space that could increase the speed of cultivation. Only the mother nest supported by the heavenly gods could live there. Of course, this was mutual. This gathering didn't last long. Then, the 9 heavenly gods sent a new order, ordering the ancient forces to attack the life stars immediately. Many of these forces didn't know anything about life stars. However, they knew Zichen very well. Thus, they began to think of a way to enter the life stars. The original life stars had very weak space barriers. To the God clan, it wasn't a problem. However, now that the life stars' rules were complete, it was extremely difficult to enter. Thus, they could only go to the starry sky and think of a way there. Anyway, many families in the starry sky had the experience of breaking the life stars' barriers. In this world, Zichen sat cross-legged. The power of the principles of heaven and earth gathered in his body, changing his constitution. This kind of change wasn't fast. It had been a long time, but his body hadn't changed completely. It would take a long time to reach the level of the heavenly god bone. However, in these years, Zichen had gained another benefit, and that was his control over the power of yin and yang had improved. The yin-yang thunder lotus could appear with just a thought. As the netherworld clone and Lei were in the outside world, they didn't get a single piece of the heavenly God principle. 10,000 years had passed in the blink of an eye. The netherworld clone and Lei had stayed here for 10,000 years, although they had forgotten the passage of time. During this period, no one had successfully become the heavenly God realm. Many God clan members had given up their lives out of desperation. During these 10,000 years, many people had plotted against Lei. Of course, they didn't have a good ending. Although the netherworld clone couldn't be compared to the real body, the difference between them wasn't their fighting competence. It was their status and principles. It was extremely easy for him to kill the level 9 powerhouses here. After all, the netherworld clone could even devour sword servants. It was just that he couldn't refine them. During these 10,000 years, the two of them accompanied each other, and didn't feel so lonely. It was also because Zichen had become a heavenly god that the two of them didn't feel so desperate. The space in front of the two of them suddenly broke open, and Zichen walked out of it. Seeing the real body, Lei's eyes lit up and she said, "Why are you willing to come out?" Zichen said, "I've grown up enough. I'm going to go there and take a look." "You've decided?" Lei said, "There might be many heavenly gods there. Moreover, if you go there, they'll definitely attack you." Zichen said in a deep voice, "I suspect that heavenly god Pagoda battle and the others have gone there, so I have to go." Zichen had always suspected that heavenly god Pagoda battle and the others hadn't died because it wasn't easy to kill a heavenly god. Now that he had become a heavenly god, he guessed that the area that only heavenly gods could sense might be the place where heavenly god Pagoda battle and the others had gone. Lei said, "In that case, you should be careful." Zichen didn't know what the situation was like there, so he didn't plan to bring Lei and the netherworld clone with him. However, Zichen had to take Heaven Breaker with him. If one could only leave and not enter that place, they would have to rely on Heaven Breaker. This time, he appeared to bid farewell to the two of them. "I'll protect her well," the netherworld clone said. Zichen nodded. He turned around and looked up at the sky, releasing the aura of a heavenly god. The two of them immediately retreated. Chapter 32-24. The space that could only be sensed by heavenly gods was everywhere. There was an entrance at any time and place, and it could be accessed with just a thought. A spatial tunnel appeared in front of Zichen, leading to a place that only heavenly gods could reach. He turned his head to look at the two in the distance, bid them farewell, and left. Swoosh! Zichen disappeared with the tunnel. The two heaved a sigh of relief. The pressure from before was too terrifying. That was the might of a heavenly god. Zichen walked to the end of the tunnel and came to an unfamiliar world. He saw mountains, waterfalls, forests, and all kinds of strange beasts. Colorful lights shone between heaven and earth, filled with endless nomological power. The rich nomological power could be seen everywhere. A human prime cultivator needed to comprehend nomological power to break through to Earth Prime. The more nomological power one comprehended, the stronger one's combat power would be after breaking through. Back then, it had taken Zichen a full 1,000 years to reach this step before he had comprehended many laws. But now, if a human prime cultivator came, he could instantly comprehend many times more nomological powers than Zichen, and then break through in an instant. Compared to the place he came to previously, this was a true holy land for cultivation. Not only human prime cultivators, but even a godly king could break through very quickly if he came here. The nomological power in this world was comparable to the nomological power crystals in the bodies of void beasts, and the energy of heaven and earth here was even more precious than a godly king's soul essence. Zichen looked around curiously, sighing at the rich energy in this area. Suddenly, his pupils shrank as he saw a magical scene. The nomological power flowing between heaven and earth suddenly began to tremble, and then the nomological power quickly merged into an irregular crystal fragment. The crystal fragment emitted a strong light, and it was a heavenly god's nomological power fragment. Zichen's eyes widened, and he seemed to be in disbelief. As a heavenly god, he naturally would not be mistaken. That was a nomological power fragment that emitted the aura of a heavenly god. This meant that as long as he obtained that fragment, he could create a heavenly god. Zichen was extremely shocked. Right at that moment, a gust of wind appeared in the surroundings of the heavenly deity's law fragment. It was a black gust of wind that enveloped the heavenly deity's law fragment. Immediately after, the place where the black wind was turned into a black hole. The black wind entered the black hole and disappeared. The heavenly god law fragment had also disappeared. Zichen was stunned. An opportunity to become a heavenly god had disappeared just like that. He could no longer sense the outside world, but he was certain that this place was definitely connected to the outside world. Otherwise, why would there be such a terrifying black wind here? Zichen walked forward. When he saw the previous scene, he became cautious because the black wind was silent and could appear anywhere at any time. He did not have the confidence to resist the attack of the black wind when he was unprepared. Zichen continued forward. Along the way, he encountered a few more black winds, but he did not see any heavenly god law fragments. After walking aimlessly for about an hour, Zichen finally found a person. The moment he saw that person, Zichen felt as if he had been struck by lightning. His body trembled as he looked in front of him in disbelief. Heavenly deity! Looking at the other parties, Zichen spoke. His voice was filled with indescribable excitement. I didn't expect that the person I was waiting for was actually you. The heavenly deity standing opposite him looked at Zichen in front of him with a very surprised expression. What's even more unexpected is that you have also become a heavenly deity. The heavenly deity opposite him walked forward. His eyes were also filled with excitement. This was because he was Tajan, Ichien's father. Back then, he had helped Zichen a lot in the heavenly deity world. Why are you here? There are rumors in the outside world that you and the other heavenly deities have died, Zichen said. We didn't die. We just came here and can't leave without permission. Did a new heavenly deity appear in the heavenly deity world? Tajan asked. Zichen nodded and said, And there are 9 new heavenly deities. What's going on? Tajan said. It's a long story. How is Chiener? She's fine. Zichen talked about what happened in the heavenly deity world after the heavenly deity left, as well as the turmoil in the heavenly deity world. After knowing that Kai Ming and Xian Lin had returned to the Life Star, Tajan was very surprised. However, he was even more gratified. Obviously, he was very happy that Zichen could let bygones be bygones. Not bad, you actually became a heavenly deity. Tajan patted Zichen's shoulder. Zichen had guessed that Tajan and the others might not have died. Now that he saw the real person, he was naturally very happy. Why are you here? Zichen looked at Tajan and asked. Tajan smiled and said, My lord asked me to come and bring someone back. I didn't expect it to be you. My lord? Zichen was startled. Who would dare to be the lord of a heavenly deity? Tajan guessed Zichen's thoughts. Tajan laughed and said, You misunderstood. That lord is also a heavenly deity. It's just that everyone calls him that. If this lord knew that he was coming, then it meant that he knew his every move. Then, when the heavenly deity wanted to kill him outside, was it also this lord's arrangement? Zichen's heart was somewhat wary of this lord. However, he was not afraid because Tajan said that the other party was also a heavenly deity. As long as it was a heavenly deity, Zichen was not afraid. Even if he was not a match, he could still run. What's going on outside? Zichen, who was following Tajan, asked again. What outside? Tajan was startled. There are many heavenly deities in the abandoned land outside. They said that they were deceived by Zeus' heavenly deity. Zichen said. I came from that place. Tajan said. I'm not sure about this either. Regarding Zeus' heavenly deity, Lienya and the others should know. Let's go. If you have any doubts, you can go back and ask the Lord. He's everywhere. Perhaps the Lord can hear our conversation clearly. Hearing Tajan's words, Zichen's expression did not change. He said, "Oh, that's great. I also want to see who that Lord is." In the depths of this world, there was a huge palace. Outside the palace, there were some buildings. These buildings and the palace in the depths were enveloped in a huge light barrier. What formed the light barrier was the pure power of laws. In these buildings, people would occasionally appear. These people were all in the same realm. They were all known as the strongest in the outside world. Heavenly deities. They're finally here. Chapter 32-25. Along the way, Zichen saw a lot of black winds. The pagoda battle god said, "These are the annihilation winds. After we came here, we mainly fought against the annihilation winds." Zichen asked in confusion, "Why fight against the annihilation winds?" The pagoda battle god said, "Because this place is the true core, and the annihilation winds have lived here for a long time. If the annihilation winds are allowed to destroy this place, then the entire god realm and the other worlds will be in chaos." Zichen's heart skipped a beat. Was this the core? In fact, we know that a new Empyrean god has appeared. Because the 9 complete Empyrean gods' laws were the result of our joint efforts. The pagoda battle god continued. Because the god realm must have an Empyrean god overseeing it. Otherwise, there will be problems with the laws of the god realm, and in the end, the god realm will collapse. With the Empyrean god overseeing it, the chaotic laws can be suppressed. Zichen nodded and did not ask anything else. Soon, the two arrived at the true core. Zichen saw a huge light barrier. It was like a formation that covered a region. "This is where we'll be stationed." The two flashed in. Zichen saw many buildings and many Empyrean gods. In front of these buildings, there was a palace. The pagoda battle god said, "That is where the Lord is. I will take you there." The two arrived outside the palace. The pagoda battle god did not enter. Instead, he said from outside, "Lord, I have brought him here. Thank you for your hard work. Let Zichen in." A calm voice came from the palace. For some reason, Zichen felt that this voice was very familiar. It was as if he had heard it somewhere before. With a suspicious heart, Zichen pushed open the tightly shut door and walked into the main hall. A person stood in the palace. He turned around and looked at Zichen. He smiled and said, "Zichen, long time no see." The moment he saw the other party's face, Zichen's expression changed. He recognized the other party. He was the light shadow that gave the Empyrean god's law crystal to Sander and the others. Zichen had once threatened him, and even stabbed him. Who would have thought that the other party was actually the Lord that all the heavenly gods spoke of? The one who went to the god realm last time was only my projection. What do you want to know? The heavenly god smiled and said, "Oh, I forgot to introduce myself. My name is Sami, the first heavenly god after the god realm appeared. Of course, this is only a matter of time and has nothing to do with battle prowess." Zichen was surprised by how old the other party was, but it was obvious that he knew more secrets. Thus, he asked, "Was it your arrangement for a deity to appear in the abandoned land?" Sami smiled bitterly. "Speaking of this matter, my heart still aches. Although it's only a small piece of law fragment, it's extremely costly to take it out of the heavenly wind." "Why do you want to kill me?" Zichen asked again. "Aren't you still alive?" "I just wanted you to come sooner. I didn't expect you to take so long to come," said Sami. "Why?" Zichen asked again. "Because we need your help." Sami looked at Zichen. "And only you can help us. Why should I help you?" Zichen asked back. Sami said in surprise, "Don't you want to help the god realm? This is the world we live in. We can't go out here because we have to protect the god realm. I'm a defiant of the heavens," Zichen said. "I'm your enemy." Sami couldn't help laughing. "I don't know where you've heard such ridiculous words. I don't think you're a defiant of the heavens. You're just a very special existence in the God realm. You're very powerful, but that's because you've mastered special rules. What does that have to do with being a defiant of the heavens? Or are you planning to defy the heavens? But where is the heavens for you to defy? The most threatening thing in our world is the heavenly wind outside. Maybe that's the heavens you want to defy. Zichen frowned. Looking at Sammy's expression, he didn't seem to be lying. Sammy said, "Although I don't know where the saying that you're a defiant of the heavens came from, I also know why this saying appeared." "Why?" Zichen asked. "Because of the unwillingness on the path of cultivation. After a while, this unwillingness will become a real thing that will be passed down." Sammy smiled. "If I'm not wrong, you're not the only defiant of the heavens in this world. Besides you, there are many defiants of the heavens. However, after a certain period of time, they will forget their identity as a defiant of the heavens. Yeah, I remember that the pagoda battling god has a daughter. She's also a defiant of the heavens, right? So, does she still consider herself a defiant of the heavens? Is she still on the path of defiance of the heavens?" Zichen frowned. How could those defiants of the heavens be compared to him? He represented the fate of the life star. If he was strong, the life star would be strong too. Sammy continued, "I know what you're doubting, but it only means that you're a person with a great fate. It's also the main reason why I said you're special. In fact, the life star you're on was originally one with the God realm. However, because of a great war many years ago, the God realm and the life star were separated. After the life star was separated from the God realm, it became weaker and weaker due to the loss of the power of rules." Zichen said in a low voice, "It's not just weak, but also oppressive. This includes the suppression of the God realm." Sammy said, "I know about this. If I say that it's a misunderstanding, you won't believe me. Because of the special existences on the life star, they need to grow under pressure. Therefore, their lives are destined not to be ordinary. However, as time passes, this kind of execution slowly changes. This is also the main reason why you survived after I learned about this." Looking at Zichen in front of him, Sammy said, "After all, the God realm is a little special. The gods aren't always the same. Many things are not connected, so there is no explanation. Therefore, there is a problem." Zichen asked. "So, the reason why God Lienya protected me was because of you?" Sammy said, "It has something to do with me. However, you shouldn't have died. That's the main reason." Of course, it made sense. However, Zichen still had doubts. What's the matter with the abandoned land? It's not called the abandoned land. It's called the land of exile. Although it's cruel to the God clan, for the stability of the God realm, there's no other way. Sammy said, "Because they can restrain the vanishing heavenly wind outside, which reduces the pressure on us." Zichen frowned. Although what Sammy said made sense, he still couldn't believe it completely. After all, that God realm expert wanted to kill him. Chapter 32:26. "It seems that you still don't believe me." Sammy smiled faintly and said, "But it doesn't matter. As long as you agree to help the God realm, you can always keep your guard up against me. The God race in that area is there to contain the wind of annihilation?" Zichen asked. "Of course, but if they are lucky enough, they have a chance to become an enlightened master," Sammy said. "How difficult is it to become an enlightened master? How many God race are there in the God realm, and how many enlightened masters are there? They have a great chance of becoming an enlightened master when they come to this area. And as long as they are careful, they won't die here at all. Unfortunately, they are resentful and can't see any hope, so they want to die. They think too simply of enlightened masters. This is not a realm that can be reached through cultivation. It is completely dependent on luck, and it is heaven-defying luck." "Well, you see, the word heaven-defying is used." Sammy was unexpectedly humorous. "In the God realm, the alien race is our enemy, but why is there a shadow of the alien race in this time's ascension? It seems that they are the leaders this time." Also, why don't the god race kill the alien race? Zichen asked again. Sammy smiled and said, You already have the answer to this question in your heart, don't you? Zichen didn't say anything. The god race had the strength to destroy the alien race, but they didn't go to do so. Wasn't he the same? Although he was a 9th grade god king, if he insisted on destroying the alien race, who could stop him? Sammy said, Yes, it is for balance. If the god realm loses the alien race, it will lose its greatest source of resources, and the harm it will bring to the god realm is not low at all, and the laws will be chaotic. The god race and the alien race are symbiotic, and neither can be missing. Just like how there is light in the world, there is darkness. Zichen said. Last question, how did Zeus god die? You mean Zeus? Sammy said with a smile. Zeus was too unlucky. He wanted to go to the place you went, but before he reached that place of exile, he encountered the wind of annihilation. He was lucky that he wasn't killed immediately, but his origin of laws was damaged. As for what happened after that, I have no idea. Zeus's death caused us to waste a law crystal. With no other choice, we could only find another heavenly deity to oversee the divine realm. You know that heavenly deity, the Tower Battle heavenly deity. Sammy shook his head. He seemed to be very pained by the loss of the law crystal, but did not care about Zeus' death at all. If that was the case, it would make sense. After Zeus, heavenly god, lost his nomological powers, he was equivalent to a divine king. It was normal for the ancestors of the ancient races to go all out to kill him. However, it was clear that Zeus' heavenly god's power of laws hadn't completely disappeared. They couldn't destroy him, so they chose to seal him. All of his doubts were solved just like that. Everything was very reasonable, but Zichen still felt that there was something wrong. Could it be that the so-called heaven-defying that he had grown up to this point was just a joke? All right, I have to get back to work. I can't chat with you anymore. If you have any other questions, you can ask me later. Of course, you can also ask Leia and the others. After all, they are the closest heavenly deities to you. Sammy said. Someone will arrange your residence. If you want to help the divine realm, they will tell you what to do. If you don't want to, then forget it. Of course, I think you will be willing to help, because heavenly deities don't care about sides. Zichen walked out of the hall and saw the Tower Battle heavenly deity. Besides him, Zichen also saw heavenly goddess Leia, heavenly deity Shibei, and the others. Although their standpoints were different back then, after that incident, the heavenly deities did not make things difficult for him. Of course, when Ben Senla targeted Zichen didn't know if there were any heavenly deities behind him. However, he had even let Ben Senla go, so he wouldn't bicker with these heavenly deities. Zichen, it really is you! Heavenly Goddess Leia was very happy to see Zichen. I knew you would definitely become a heavenly deity! Zichen had a very good impression of Heavenly Goddess Leia. Back then, she had given him and Ichien her blessings. At the same time, it was her words that had allowed him to live. She had even said that she would give him a big present on his wedding day with Ichien. The other heavenly deities all had smiles on their faces. Even heavenly deity Shibei didn't pull a long face at this moment. Clearly, this was like meeting an old friend in a foreign land. It's rare for us to meet. Come, let's drink! Heavenly Goddess Leia stepped forward, hooked her arm around Zichen's neck, and walked off into the distance. This heavenly deity was unexpectedly so forthright. This caught Zichen a little off guard. Fortunately, he was now a heavenly deity and had enough self-control. He allowed a faint fragrance to assail his nostrils without batting an eyelid. The others were already familiar with Leia's behavior and didn't find it strange. The wine was brewed by the heavenly deities in the Pagoda Battle's residence. There were too many exotic flowers and strange fruits outside. In addition, the heavenly deities controlled the power of laws that could affect the flow of time. Brewing wine was naturally extremely easy. What do you usually do? Zichen asked as he drank the wine personally brewed by Leia. What else do we do? We fight against the wind of annihilation and try to protect this core space. Then we find a way to find some law fragments and give them to Lord Sammy so that he can condense law crystals, Leia said. All these years we've been doing this. Of course, it's all to stop the wind of annihilation. As for the heavenly deity law fragments, we haven't obtained a single one. Zichen asked again. Then have you ever seen anyone become a heavenly deity and come here? Clearly, Zichen was referring to that area. Of course we have. Heavenly Goddess Lienya said. But those who came all died. Died? Why? Zichen asked in surprise. Even people like us are in danger of dying, to say nothing of them. Zichen suddenly understood. Those people had only obtained law fragments and weren't true heavenly deities. In this place, even true heavenly deities would be in danger. Those who had only obtained law fragments would be in even greater danger. Could it be that we can't leave? Zichen asked again. Under two circumstances, we can leave. Heavenly Goddess Lienya extended two slender fingers and said, First, we need enough law crystals and enough heavenly gods to ensure the stability of the laws of the god realm. Of course, there's no fixed number. There's another method, and that is to make the wind of annihilation disappear permanently. Suddenly, a huge tremor came from outside. The Pagoda Battle's residents began to tremble. Damn it, it's coming again. Chapter 32:27. The heavenly gods who were drinking quickly ran out of the room. Zichen appeared and looked up at the sky. The light shield formed by the power of laws was now being attacked by a destructive force, and was constantly distorting. Outside the light shield, the heavenly wind of obliteration was blowing. Dozens of heavenly gods appeared inside the light shield. They were constantly channeling their power of laws into the shield, trying to protect it. A heavenly god flew into the distance. In the face of the heavenly wind of obliteration, the light shield twisted violently. Even the combined power of the heavenly gods could not stop it. With a crack, the heavenly wind of obliteration entered this world. Seeing the heavenly wind of obliteration enter this world, all the heavenly gods frowned, but their expressions were still relatively calm. Who's back? Heavenly Goddess Lienya turned and shouted into the distance. It's Heavenly God Wu Ge! A voice came from afar. At this time, the heavenly gods began to move. Zichen also dodged. The room where they were drinking was instantly swept away by the heavenly wind of obliteration. In the next moment, the room disappeared without a trace. Zichen, who was retreating, turned his attention to another direction. There was a heavenly god there who was flying quickly. His target was the Great Hall. However, before he could reach the Great Hall, the black wind approached. His expression changed. Here! As he spoke, he waved his hand and a law fragment flew out. The heavenly wind of obliteration that had been chasing the heavenly gods turned into a dozen hurricanes and scattered. One of the black winds landed on the law crystal and then disappeared with it. Buzz! The light shield that had been torn apart by the heavenly wind of obliteration was now repaired. The destroyed buildings were now uprooted from the ground. The area covered by the law fragments was restored to its original state. Everything seemed like an illusion. However, in Zichen's eyes, the heavenly god who had obtained the law fragment turned pale. His eyes were filled with unwillingness. The other heavenly gods also sighed. Lienya said unhappily to the heavenly god, Wu Ge, next time bring in a law fragment when you're 100% sure. You've ruined all the wine I'd brewed. Wu Ge, who was already full of unwillingness, immediately became angry when he heard Lienya's words. What do you mean, Lienya? I think you shouldn't be so stubborn, Lienya said directly. You call this stubborn? This is called trying, do you understand? Even if I fail again and again, it's still better than you not bringing back a single fragment, right? Wu Ge said coldly. You're right. I didn't bring back a single fragment, but I didn't destroy this place even once, did I? Don't you know how many times you've failed? If you don't have the ability, then don't cause trouble for the other heavenly gods. Everyone is very busy. After she finished speaking, she dragged Zichen to the Tower Battle's residence to continue drinking. Don't be fooled by the fact that this place has returned to its original state. What's being consumed is the power of the heavenly deities. As they walked, Lienya said, in this place, if a heavenly god cannot ensure that his heavenly god energy is abundant, it will be very dangerous to leave this place. Zichen listened quietly to Leia, gaining a deeper understanding of this world. The heavenly gods only did two things here. One was to go out and search for the heavenly god law fragments. The second was to maintain the light barrier here. As for that lord, it was said that he was responsible for maintaining the operation of the main hall. The main hall was the true core of this world. As long as a heavenly god's fragment was brought into the hall, the wind of annihilation would not be able to reach it. Only then would it be considered a success. Why is the wind of annihilation chasing after the fragment? Is it conscious? Zichen thought back to the pair of eyes he'd seen when he'd broken through, but he couldn't be sure if it had been a hallucination. How could it be conscious? Leia said. It's just that the strange power of the fragment attracts the wind of annihilation. Half of the heavenly gods left here to search for fragments, while the other half stayed behind to maintain the operation of this place. Once they had enough fragments to form 9 complete crystallizations, Sammy would summon the original heavenly gods back and let the new ones take control of the heavenly god realm. Because the new heavenly gods were weak, if they came here before they grew up, they would die. Zichen still had questions, but the Lord was said to be everywhere in this place. He could hear every conversation. He didn't know how to ask them. I'll go out tomorrow. Come with me, Leia said. All right. Since he was already here, he might as well take things as they came. However, Zichen was still a little lost. It was as if he had lost his goal. A new building had appeared next to Leia's, and Zichen lived there. Heaven Breaker, what's going on? Zichen was full of questions. He could only ask Heaven Breaker. You're a heaven-defying one. There's no mistaking it. Heaven Breaker's voice rang out in Zichen's mind. But where can I go against the heavens? Zichen asked again. I don't know for now. You don't have to worry. Your appearance is a threat to this world. Trouble will come knocking. You just have to be patient, Heaven Breaker said. Then should I help them obtain the heavenly god's law fragment? That's up to you. Zichen thought for a moment, then decided to go get some fragments. This was because he could not use the condensed law crystals, but his friends could. After all, they only wanted the heavenly gods to maintain the rules. They didn't specify anyone. The next day, Leia and Zichen went out. There's no pattern, no special place. Everything depends on luck. If you're lucky, you get a fragment. If you're unlucky, you go home, Leia said. Every day, fragments form in this area. We need to find the fragments that the Black Wind doesn't have time to find. Half a day later, the two found a fragment. Just like what Zichen had seen before, when the power of laws fused, it became a fragment. Leia looked at the fragment in front of her. Every time a fragment forms, the wind of annihilation will appear. The space around them began to distort as a black wind formed. Leia continued, What we can do is be faster than the black wind. The fragment had formed, but Leia didn't go forward. The black wind around them was terrifying, and it had completely enveloped the fragment. She continued, For example, we can't get this fragment. If we rush forward, we can only. Before Lienya could finish her sentence, Zichen had already disappeared from her side. He appeared in front of the black wind and reached a hand into it. A light shield appeared around him. The shield twisted under the black wind, but it didn't shatter. Chapter 32-28. Boom! The black wind went berserk, spreading out in all directions. Let's go! Zichen shouted at Lienya, who was still in a daze. Lienya was still in a state of shock. She had not expected Zichen to be able to block the wind of annihilation. With Zichen's shout, she finally came to her senses. Divine light swirled around her body as she flew off into the distance. Now that you have the fragment, go back to the main hall, Lienya said quickly. The wind of annihilation can sense the aura of the precept fragment. It will chase after you until the fragment disappears or you enter the main hall. Lienya had explained this earlier, and Zichen was well aware of it. The moment he grabbed the fragment, he displayed extreme speed. He flew forward, lightning flashing on his body. Wherever he passed, the distorted space paused for a moment, as if it had entered a state of stillness. However, this state of stillness was fleeting. The space he was in instantly shattered, and the wind of annihilation arrived. Lienya turned around and fled into the distance. She looked at Zichen, who was moving left and right amidst the wind of annihilation, and said, "This little guy is too reckless." What is that? Frozen space? No, the wind of annihilation can shatter space. Frozen space is useless. It's time! As Zichen passed, the wind swept past. The swaying spiritual flowers stopped moving, and the fleeing exotic beasts also paused. This pause was absolute stillness. As Zichen passed, absolute stillness disappeared, and the wind of annihilation arrived, destroying everything. This time stillness came from Zichen's extreme speed. Lienya was shocked, but she also saw hope. Although it could only stop the wind of annihilation for a moment, for a heavenly god, this moment was long enough to determine life and death. At the same time, in the main hall, Sammy was also stunned when he saw this. A look of surprise appeared in his eyes. As I expected, his arrival can indeed change this place. Zichen continued to fly forward. Under the urging of the precept, his extreme speed was displayed to the extreme, and time seemed to have stopped. Behind him, the wind of annihilation chased after him relentlessly, producing rumbling sounds. Before long, Zichen saw the law light shield. Through the light shield, he saw the sky celestials inside. At this moment, they were looking at Zichen in shock. "Don't come here! Don't come here!" As Zichen moved forward, the voices of the heavenly deities rang out. It wasn't that they didn't care about the law fragments, but that there were too many annihilation winds behind Zichen. It was too terrifying. Even if all the heavenly deities here worked together, they still wouldn't be able to stop the annihilation winds. Furthermore, with so many heavenly winds following him, it was impossible for him to succeed. He might as well just throw away the law fragment. However, Zichen clearly had no intention of stopping. His figure did not stop as he continued to fly forward. Wuge had caused a huge commotion in this area yesterday, and he had consumed a lot of energy, so he did not go out today. When he saw Zichen moving forward in the black wind, a mocking smile appeared at the corner of his mouth. "It's that new guy, right? He really doesn't know what's good for him. Does he really think that anyone can bring in a law fragment? He should be one of Leia's people. If he wants to force his way in, this place will definitely be a mess. Let's see what Leia will say when she comes back." At this moment, many heavenly deities were shouting at Zichen, their faces filled with anger. However, Zichen had no intention of stopping. "Kid, throw away the law fragment. Do you want to get us killed?" Wuge also shouted. When Tajan and Shibei saw this, they were very nervous. At this moment, Zichen was undoubtedly dancing with the Grim Reaper. He could be engulfed by the annihilation winds at any time. "No, if this goes on, he'll die. We have to throw away the law fragment. Staying alive is more important." Tajan was about to remind him. "Full defense. Let him in." At this moment, Sammy's voice rang out from the main hall. Everyone was stunned. They did not understand Sammy's action. It was clearly impossible. Why would he try something like this? However, since Sammy had spoken, they had no choice but to obey. Thus, they all poured their power of law into the light barrier. They were quite open-minded. Even if this place was turned into a mess, it had nothing to do with them. Whoosh! Zichen rushed in without any resistance. Then, he went straight for the main hall. Behind him, the law light barrier blocked all the heavenly winds outside. The heavenly deities from this area all began to use their power to protect the light barrier. The black wind instantly filled the light barrier. In the next moment, the light barrier exploded. All the heavenly deities coughed up blood and retreated. They could not even block it for a moment. The annihilation winds flew in. Looking at the annihilation winds that seemed to fill the sky, all the heavenly deities' eyes were filled with shock. They all scattered. At this moment, the annihilation winds also scattered. They appeared in all directions around Zichen. It seemed that the annihilation winds had become even faster in this area. Yesterday, Wuge had reached this level. Then, he had no choice but to throw away the law fragment. Now, in their eyes, the newcomer should also be thrown away. However, compared to yesterday's scene, the area of destruction today was even wider. This area was almost destroyed. Soon, the heavenly deities were shocked to discover that the newcomer did not throw away the law fragment. Instead, he continued to charge forward. "You're courting death!" Wuge sneered again. Whoosh! 2 gusts of heavenly winds formed a pincer attack on Zichen. Zichen charged forward without hesitation. The wind that was originally falling on Zichen's body paused for a moment. He smoothly passed through it. "Time stop!" Everyone present was a heavenly deity with extraordinary eyesight. When they saw this scene, they all cried out in shock. The moment time stopped, everything in the world would stop. Even the annihilation winds were the same. Although the wind only paused for a moment, it was enough to protect the lives of the heavenly deities. At this moment, they finally understood what this newcomer was relying on. For a moment, everyone's expression became complicated. Wuge was slightly shocked. Then, he sneered and said, "So what if you've mastered time stop? The power of the annihilation winds here is far beyond imagination. Its speed is also incomparably strange. If obtaining a law fragment was so easy, with so many of us, why can't we gather 9 after tens of thousands of years?" As if to prove Wu Ji's words, at the moment Zichen dodged the heavenly wind, another heavenly wind appeared without a sound. The moment the wind appeared, it enveloped Zichen's body. Exclamations rose from all around, followed by sighs. What a pity! If he was more careful, this newcomer could still succeed. It was just that he was too impatient. Now, he was swept by the wind and would definitely die. Exclamations rose again. Suddenly, a light figure rushed out from the annihilation winds. He was like a bolt of lightning. Wherever he passed, he brought time to a standstill as he rushed into the main hall. P.S. There are only a few chapters left before the book is finished. I've already deleted a few chapters of the new book, and I'm not satisfied with them. From tomorrow onwards, I'm fully preparing for the new book. Thunder Warrior has changed from 2 chapters to 1. Friends who think it's too slow can save it and read it after the book is finished. Chapter 32-29. Swoosh! Zichen's figure flashed and disappeared. The great hall released a blinding light, as if it had formed a world of its own. The destructive wind that was wreaking havoc instantly disappeared. When the wind disappeared, the surroundings were a mess, riddled with holes and black holes. The heavenly gods here did not immediately repair the place. Instead, they stared blankly at the great hall. At this moment, the great hall was glowing brightly. The unique isolation law had been activated, indicating that a law fragment had been obtained. Although a law fragment could not be refined into a complete law crystal, the appearance of each law fragment meant that a heavenly god had succeeded. However, today was different. The one who had obtained the law fragment was a newcomer. He had obtained it on his first day here. What did this mean? Luck? Obviously not. Because Pagoda Battle God and the others had been here for tens of thousands of years and had not obtained a single law fragment. Of course, it was strength. Not only did this person have the ability to stop time, but he also had the ability to resist the wind. This was amazing among the heavenly gods. Thinking back to what he had said earlier, Wu Ji's expression turned ugly. The other heavenly gods were the same. Who would have thought that this guy would succeed? What are you all standing there for? Hurry up and repair this place. At this moment, Leia's voice awakened the heavenly gods from their daze. Only then did they react. Then, they released their law powers and began to repair the place. Wuge, do you see this? This kind of exhaustion is meaningful. Leia looked at the messy surroundings and said, although the exhaustion is a little high, compared to your exhaustion without any results, this exhaustion is almost negligible. Wu Ji's expression turned even uglier. He snorted and said, it's just luck. What's there to be proud of? Leia smiled and said, very good. I hope you can maintain this optimistic attitude from now on. In the great hall, Zichen stood. Sammy stood in front of him and said with a smile, well done. I knew you would succeed. Zichen's face was a little pale. He had continuously used the 9 passing thunderbolts to the limit. In addition to the exhaustion of energy, the exhaustion of his soul was not small. This made him feel strained. But since he didn't have any experience the first time, he believed that the next time would be better. Sammy extended his hand and said, come, give me the fragments. After I gather them all, I will condense them into a complete law crystal. Zichen handed the law fragment forward and asked, do I have the authority to distribute it? If half of the fragments of a law crystal belong to you, then you have the right to distribute them. Sammy took the fragment and said with a smile, all right. Zichen nodded. This was not a problem for him. He had not expended much energy, so it would not take long for him to recover. He believed that he would be able to obtain even more law fragments in the following time. When Zichen walked out of the Great Hall, the area had already returned to normal. Furthermore, none of the heavenly deities had returned to their residences. They were all looking at him. This kind of attention made Zichen feel a little uneasy. He walked straight ahead. Good job, little brother Zichen. Heavenly deity Lienya came to Zichen's side and wrapped her arms around Zichen's neck. You should let them see what it means to collect law fragments. Otherwise, those fellows who don't know the immensity of heaven and earth will make a mess here. Zichen smiled bitterly. There was no need to draw so much hatred, right? This was because Wuge was not the only one with an ugly expression. The other heavenly deities were the same. Clearly, not everyone could succeed on their first try. Are you still going out today, little brother Zichen? Heavenly deity Lienya asked. Zichen ignored the last 4 words. He shook his head and said, no, I expended too much energy just now. I need to recover. Everyone breathed a sigh of relief. This was normal. If he had not expended any energy, it would clearly be abnormal. In fact, in their opinion, Zichen would not be able to go out for the next few days. But then, Zichen said that he would go tomorrow. This caused everyone to choke. All right, then I'll go with you tomorrow. Lienya laughed loudly. Now drink with me. Pagoda Battle God and the others had long known Lienya's personality. They had even wondered how she had become a heavenly deity. A new day. Lienya and Zichen went out again. This time, Lienya purposely made some noise as they left. Clearly, she wanted to let everyone know that they were leaving. A few hours later, a thunderous voice came from outside the law light shield. When the heavenly deities heard the commotion, they saw Zichen alone in front of the wind of annihilation. They were extremely shocked, but after seeing what had happened the day before, they did not hesitate to use all their strength to block the wind of annihilation. This time, the wind of annihilation broke through the barrier in an instant, and attacked Zichen in a frenzy. Zichen dodged to the left, and dodged to the right. The speed at which he froze time was miraculous. In the end, he took the wind of annihilation head-on, and charged into the hall. He had succeeded again. If yesterday's success was attributed to luck, then today's success had nothing to do with luck. There were so many heavenly deities here, and they had stayed here for so many years. None of them lacked luck. Wuge, don't you think Zichen's luck is a little too good today? Zichen entered the hall and the wind of annihilation disappeared. Lienya stood above the messy ground and asked Wuge. Wuge snorted coldly and returned to his room. According to the original plan, he was supposed to go out today. However, repairing this place had consumed a lot of energy, and he had to give up on the idea of going out today. On the 3rd day, Zichen came again with the wind of annihilation. The 4th day, the 5th day, the 6th day. In the following days, Zichen brought back a nomological fragment every day. This made all the heavenly deities admire Zichen. In just a few days, he had gained more than the heavenly deities had gained in tens of thousands of years. On the 8th day, Zichen, who had obtained 8 nomological fragments, stopped going out. It wasn't that he didn't want to, but the heavenly deities had come to his door and threatened to let Zichen rest for a few days. They couldn't hold on any longer. Every day, the wind of annihilation that Zichen brought would completely destroy this place, then consume their heavenly deities' nomological power to recover. This recovery was very energy-consuming, so much so that after a few days, their recovery couldn't keep up with the consumption. A few days ago, all the heavenly deities had stopped going out and stayed in the hall. However, the wind of annihilation was getting stronger and stronger. Because the heavenly deities needed to recover, Zichen didn't go out these few days. He stayed in his residence. Lianya came early in the morning. She didn't recover either, but stayed at Zichen's place. She had no intention of leaving, and she chatted with Zichen intermittently. Chapter 32:30. The Empyrean god was startled at first, then greeted her in a friendly manner. But she only snorted in response. The Empyrean god only sat for a moment, chatting with Zichen for a bit before leaving. Zichen watched the Empyrean god leave. "He seems to have something to say," he said. "Of course, he's interested in your speed and your martial arts," said Lianya, annoyed. "What?" Zichen's expression changed. "You get a law fragment every day. They can tell you're interested in your speed and cultivation method, so they want to get it from you. What do you think I'm doing here? Just chatting with you? Do you think I'm that free? As long as I'm here, they won't dare to ask, unless they're willing to put down their pride. They want my cultivation method and speed? That's ridiculous." Zichen appeared to be speechless. His extreme speed was unique to the Thunder Clan. As for his cultivation method, it was a unique and heaven-defying power of yin and yang. Of course, that was not the main point. He could block the wind of annihilation because his world had merged with the heaven, earth, and man tomes. How could he give that away? Before you came, they thought all Empyrean gods were the same. They all mastered the power of laws, and their combat power was about the same. There wasn't much of a difference. But with your arrival, they saw the gap between you and them. That's why they're thinking this. After Edelman left Zichen's residence, the smile on his face gradually faded and turned ugly. He did not return, but went to Wu Ji's residence. "How was it?" Wu Ge stood up and asked Edmund as he walked in. Edmund snorted angrily. "That bitch was here. I didn't say anything. She was here the whole time?" Wu Ge raised an eyebrow. Edelman said in annoyance. "He has obviously guessed our purpose. If that's the case, we'll have to think of another way." A moment later, Wu Ge left his residence and headed for the main hall. Inside the hall, Sammy smiled as he watched Wu Ge approach. "My lord, I'm here to report something that will change the situation here." Wu Ge cupped his fists and spoke politely. "Okay, tell me about it." Sammy was still smiling. "Zichen possesses the ability to stop time and temporarily resist the wind of annihilation. If we share these two things, I'm sure we'll be able to obtain countless law fragments. At that time, we will be able to create countless heavenly deities, and the situation here will naturally change," Wu Ge said excitedly. "When that time comes, we will be free." Sammy shook his head and said, "That's inappropriate." "Why is it inappropriate?" Wu Ge asked in surprise. Sammy said, "We can't force them to do something they don't want to." Wu Ge left the palace. Although Sammy did not agree to his request in the end, Wu Ge was not upset at all, because he had thought of a solution. After leaving the hall, he went straight to Zichen's residence. After knocking on the door, he did not enter. Instead, he stood outside. "Zichen, this time, Wu Ge has come personally to ask for a favor." Wu Ge stood outside the door and said, What is it? Zichen's voice rang out. Lienya stood beside him and looked coldly at Wu Ge. Her expression seemed to be saying, "If you still want face, say it." The rooms of the heavenly deities were all independent spaces. If they did not want to be disturbed, no one could hear their conversation. Of course, Sammy was an exception. He was very mysterious, and no one knew if he had the ability to monitor all the areas. Now that Wu Ge was standing outside the door, it meant that his words were no longer restricted. If all the heavenly deities here wanted to hear, they would be able to. In fact, everyone's attention was on this side. Zichen, you know the situation here as well. As heavenly gods, we are also in great danger here. Therefore I, Wu Ge, am begging you. Can you teach us how to stop time and how to resist the wind of annihilation? Wu Ge cupped his fists and said in a low voice, I beg you. As long as we have these two things, you don't have to fight alone. We can share your burden. As Wu Ji's voice fell, the entire world seemed to fall silent. Lienya's cold voice rang out. Wu Ge, you really are shameless. Those are Zichen's things. Why should he give them to you? Not me, us. Of course, if Zichen is willing to share his techniques, I can choose not to learn them. Wu Ge said righteously. As long as I can change the environment here, I will do anything. You are too shameless. Lienya was furious. At this time, all the heavenly deities' attention was on this side. They were all waiting for Zichen's reply. Zichen smiled faintly. You must have misunderstood. My techniques cannot be shared. They are unique. Even if I teach them to you, you cannot use them. Wu Ge said, There is no problem in trying. We are all heavenly deities and have mastered the highest laws in the world. In terms of learning ability, we are very fast. Wu Ge, you really are shameless. Lienya was so angry that she laughed. Zichen said, It's true that you can't learn my cultivation method. But, Wu Ge wanted to say something, but at this time, Sammy's voice rang out. Zichen's identity is very special. As far as I know, you cannot learn his techniques. He did not reject you because he is stingy. From now on, you should focus on recovering. Leave the search for fragments to Zichen. Zichen, I beg of you. Zichen looked in the direction of the main hall, nodded slightly, then turned and returned to his room. Sorry for disturbing you. I have judged you with my own yardstick. Goodbye. Wu Ge saluted Zichen, who had already entered his room. On the third day, Zichen and Lienya went out again. This time, as expected, they returned with another fragment. Even with the protection of the heavenly deities, the barrier could not last long before it was destroyed. This situation continued for a long time to come. Every time they went out, they would definitely gain something. These heavenly deities could not help but admire Zichen's strength. As for Zichen's techniques, they no longer cared about them. On a new day, Zichen returned from the outside world. The heavenly deities were already used to this and quickly gathered. With a bang, the barrier shattered, and the heavenly deities were sent flying. Zichen successfully entered the great hall under the siege of countless annihilating heavenly winds. Sammy was still smiling. Chapter 32-31. There was almost no concept of the passage of time in this area. Zichen had forgotten the exact time, but he knew that he had obtained a lot of law fragments, and should be able to condense a lot of law crystals. Therefore, he had to take some law crystals with him. After all, a law crystal represented a heavenly god. As for what path Zichen would take next, he didn't know, but since he had the ability to make his friends become sky gods, why not? Okay, Sammy said without hesitation. Thanks to you all these years, I also refined some law crystals. You can take some with you. Seeing Zichen nod, Sammy said again. If you're not in a hurry, can you go to the Amphilas? Where is that? Zichen asked. It's a special area with a lot of law fragments, but it's also very dangerous. I thought you would continue to stay here, so we'll take our time. I didn't expect you to leave so suddenly, Sammy said. You can go there and have a look when you have time. If it's too dangerous, then forget it. After all, you've done enough. I'll send someone to take a look, Zichen said and turned to leave. Pagoda John and the others came too late and don't know much about that place. Let me think, who knows? Arwa should know. He even took out a fragment from there. Zichen knew Alva. Because he had stayed here for a long time, he could name more than 100 sky gods. Their relationship was quite harmonious. After Zichen returned, he went to Pagoda John and told him that he was leaving. You're leaving? The 9 sky gods had all come to Pagoda John and were surprised to hear that Zichen was leaving. At the same time, there was longing in their eyes. They had stayed here for a long time and naturally wanted a change of environment. I'll go to the Amphilos tomorrow. If I'm lucky enough, I'll bring back more fragments this time and see if Sammy will let you go with me, Zichen said. If it doesn't work, I'll stay here for a few more days and collect 9 law crystals. Deep Valley? I've heard of that place. It's very dangerous. Tajan frowned. Among the 9, not everyone had heard of the Amphilos before. Lienya was one of them. She was surprised to hear Pagoda John mention it. I don't know the details. Anyway, it's very dangerous, but it's also very special. The fact that Arwa had obtained a fragment from there was still an unsolved mystery. However, in terms of familiarity with the Amphilos, only Arwa is familiar with it, Tower Battle God said. I'll look for him tomorrow, Zichen said. We'll go with you, Lienya said. Zichen shook his head and smiled. No, if there's a big harvest, there will definitely be more heavenly winds coming. That split second of blocking the heavenly winds will be of great use to me. Early the next morning, Zichen went to look for Alva. Arwa looked like a middle-aged man. In fact, there were no old people among the gods because they had surging vitality, and could transform into anything they wanted. Zichen's arrival surprised Arwa. You're a great expert. Why didn't you go out today? Instead, you came to look for me. I want to take a look at the Amphilos, Zichen said. Amphilos? Arwa was startled. What are you going to do there? I heard there are many law fragments there. There are many, but it's also very dangerous. It's best if you don't go there, Arwa suggested. Zichen smiled. Take me there. If it's too dangerous, I'll come back. Seeing that Zichen was determined to go, Arwa could only nod. No one else followed them. Only Zichen and Alva left the place. That place is very dangerous. I actually don't recommend you go, Arwa said. The speed at which you obtain fragments is already unmatched. I'm preparing to leave, Zichen said. Leave? Arwa was startled. You can leave after coming here? Sammy has already promised me. Arwa was somewhat envious of Zichen. Which god who came here didn't want to leave? Unfortunately, they couldn't leave. Tell me about the Amphilos. What's so dangerous about it? I heard that you once obtained a fragment from the Amphilos, Zichen said. The danger is the wind of annihilation. Rather than saying that it's dangerous, it's more accurate to say that it's strange, Arwa said in a low voice. What's strange? Zichen looked at him curiously. The wind of annihilation doesn't appear all the time. Sometimes the fragment will stay there for a long time without disappearing. Last time, I obtained a fragment purely by luck, Arwa said. It's just luck. Arwa, Zichen, what are you two doing here? Suddenly, a voice sounded. Hearing this, Zichen turned his head and saw 3 heavenly deities appear in another direction. One of them was Wuge. A long time ago, Wuge had the idea of obtaining Zichen's cultivation method, but he gave up in the end. Over the years, they got along pretty well. Arwa was surprised to see the 3 of them. What are you doing here? It should be known that the gods usually didn't go out. They all stayed in that area to maintain the law-light barrier. A group of gods protected it, but the moment Zichen arrived, the law-light barrier would shatter. We're going to collect some resources. The wine we brewed last time is gone. Wuge walked over. Why are you two together? We're going to the Deep Valley. Arwa said. The deep valley? It's very dangerous there. Wu Ji's expression changed. Zichen said he wants to take a look, Arwa said. Since you're just going to take a look, that's no problem. Let's go together. We'll go take a look too. Arwa looked at Zichen. Of course, Zichen wouldn't object. Thus, the five of them walked forward. The deep valley was between mountain peaks. The peaks were filled with exotic flowers and plants. The fragrance of the flowers filled the air. At this time, the five of them were standing at the peak of a mountain, looking down at the deep valley below. Arwa said, This place is very strange. The wind of annihilation almost never comes out, so the mountains here are very well preserved. Look, those are the law fragments. Following Arwa's finger, Zichen saw many law fragments floating in the deep valley. They were not small in size. There were more than 20 of them. The deep valley was quiet. There was nothing unusual. Even the ubiquitous wind of annihilation seemed unable to invade this place. Wu Ge and the others saw this scene and clicked their tongues in wonder. Arwa said, Let me show you what's strange about this place. As he spoke, he began to form a seal. The power of law flowed and turned into an energy palm. The palm moved toward the deep valley below. It didn't encounter any resistance and grabbed a fragment. At this time, the palm was moving back and forth with the fragment, but the black wind still didn't appear. A look of astonishment appeared on everyone's faces. Arwa said, That's all. Look again. After that, the palm flew up quickly. Buzz! The moment it was about to leave the deep valley, the black wind appeared and fell on the palm formed by the power of law. You're tuning in to the Phoenix Knights YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.